Chapter 411. The narration of the two commentators sounded at the right time and introduced the battle. The two players in this match are Key of Solomon and Madblade, Angry Blade. Demon Race Mage versus Human Race Mechanical Pugilist. Key of Solomon is currently ranked 7th, and Madblade is ranked 18th. The pre-match win rate is estimated to be 57% to 43%. From a performance of the two players in the previous matches, Key of Solomon has the upper hand. It can be noted that the venue is Blue Star's Black Phantom Sanctuary 3. The Chinese players are from Blue Star, so Madblade should have the advantage of being familiar with the terrain. It is worth mentioning that Black Star was the first person to lead the Chinese players into the galaxy. Now, the Chinese players are following Black Star. It must be said that it is fate. They have started a move. Good. Let us look forward to an exciting battle. As soon as the battle started, Madblade did not plan to fight head-on. A steel cable shot out from the waist of the armor and hooked onto a house below the city wall. With the sound of the high-speed steel cable sliding, he was pulled down and away from the city wall. He took out a large-caliber machine gun in midair, and a series of orange-red bullets were fired at Key of Solomon. Key of Solomon held his bone staff and activated the instant magic rune that was on standby. A translucent turquoise magic shield protected him within. The bullets created dense sparks on the shield. The audience could see that the durability of the shield was decreasing slowly in his status bar. At this time, Madblade had already disappeared between the buildings. Bullets were fired from time to time, and there were also small grenades that exploded on the city wall. Key of Solomon saw this and narrowed his eyes. Because he is familiar with the terrain, he used the wandering tactic first and used long-range attacks to deplete my health. As he spoke, Key of Solomon also jumped down the city wall, took out a few magic scrolls, and tore them open. Magic radiance of different colors bloomed, and a few UFFs appeared in his status bar. Tracking, stealth, misdirection, shadowed demon cloak, feigned death, F***CK. This is too expensive. Magic scrolls are so expensive. The Chinese audience couldn't help but worry for Madblade. Although they rarely came into contact with magic, they knew a lot about the effects of magic from the forums. The radar built into Madblade's armor suddenly lost track of the enemy. He frowned. Magic stealth. What a troublesome ability. I'm at a disadvantage in terms of detection. It's not good to kite. With that in mind, he changed the detection properties of the radar and began to detect air disturbances in order to relocate the position of the enemy. The detection range was smaller than before. The two stealthily tracked each other, attacking and defending each other. Their main goal was to probe each other. Once they found their opponent's weakness or loophole, a thunderous strike would immediately descend. The audience watched the match intently. Their nervousness increased as the distance between the two sides slowly decreased. When the two were moving around, their positioning, setting up traps, and exposing their weaknesses were all meticulous operations. It was commonly known as a battle of wits and courage with the air. Huff, huff, muffled panting echoed in the helmet. Madblade hid behind a house and observed the tactical screen. The traces of air disturbances appeared in his field of vision, showing a blue, snake-like line. The end of the line was the position of the enemy. Madblade was good at close combat, but he chose to distance himself. According to Key of Solomon's information, the enemy was not as fragile as other mages. Many close combat martialists lost miserably because they rashly closed in. Madblade's plan was to find an opportunity to launch a sneak attack and use a combo to control the enemy and deal full damage. Although he had an invincible trump card, Madblade would not use it rashly. If he could win with his own ability, the character's summon card that he saved could be used the next time he faced a strong enemy. His magic shield has a time limit and consumes his mana. I still have a lot of ammunition. I can consume about 28% of his mana and about 15% of his health. With this thought in mind, Madblade fired at the enemy's position and hit the magic shield. However, at this moment, a new UFF suddenly popped up in his status bar, marked Reverse Retaliation Mark. Madblade knew that this was not good. This skill was rare, and it was the first time the opponent had used it. The previous information did not mention this. The effect was very simple. When attacking the opponent, he would be located, and the opponent's attacks within a certain period of time would automatically track the enemy. This was a spell used to deal with sneak attacks and sneak attacks. The next moment, the burning sensation quickly approached. Boom! A frost fireball blasted through the house that Madblade was hiding in, turning the environment into a sea of blue fire. Key of Solomon slowly walked over from afar with an expressionless face. He was a demon mage, cultivating both ice and fire. He fused the two to form Frostfire Stream. The function of magic fusion was like the self-created blueprint of the mechanic class. The difference was that the success rate of magic fusion was higher, but the EXP consumption was also higher. The fusion mechanism was to mix two or more spells into one to obtain a new effect. It required specific casting materials. For example, to form Frost Fireball, one needed the spells Frost, Large Fireball, and the material Fire-Trapping Ice Crystal. The spells used to fuse would be forgotten. If one wanted to learn the original skills again, one would have to separate the new skills after the fusion, and the other would have to find someone to spend EXP to learn again. The special characteristic of Frost Fire was to quickly deplete the durability of metals. It was the best way to deal with mechanics. Chi. At this moment, a magical halo appeared on the surface of Frenzied Sword's NCO class armor. The jumping frost flames were repelled, and the speed of the armor's durability dropping rapidly slowed down. The enchantment from the Volga brothers gave his armor a certain level of magic resistance. We can't defend against those psychic orphans, but we can defend against you mages. Madblade's leg armor stomped on the ground, and the propulsion device on his back emitted blue flames. His power increased exponentially, and he charged forward like a rhinoceros. A huge foldable alloy shield popped out of his left arm armor, enough to protect his entire body. His right hand pulled out a short metal rod embedded in his waist armor. The short rod automatically lengthened and turned into a long and thin spear. He instantly entered melee mode. The alloy shield slammed onto the magic shield. The force was so great that Key of Solomon was forced to take 2 steps back. This time, Madblade saw the opportunity and stabbed his spear into the magic shield. A compressed explosive bullet slid into the barrel of the spear. The next moment, a violent explosion was released from the tip of the spear and exploded inside the magic shield. Boom! Black smoke spread out, and flames danced. What a beautiful attack! A mechanical pugilist tactics are ever-changing, and Frenzied Sword has changed his weapon again. Speaking of which, he hasn't used the same weapon in any of the individual battles. A commentator said nice. Wait, the damage is very low. It doesn't seem to have hit him completely. In the black smoke, Key of Solomon's figure had already disappeared. What replaced it was a stone brick that had turned into powder. His original body appeared 15 meters behind Madblade, and he did not suffer much damage. Oh, he used object replacement on himself in an emergency. This skill has a very long cooldown of 5 minutes. Looks like Key of Solomon is very careful about protecting his health. That makes sense. After all, Madblade is equipped with a mechanical suit, and his health is almost 7 times that of Key of Solomon. After the stealth was broken, the two of them entered a tug-of-war. Madblade kept poking at Key of Solomon, and Key of Solomon kited him with Frostfire. The two of them fought back and forth passionately. It looked like they were evenly matched, but the status bar showed that Madblade was at a disadvantage. His health was dropping faster. When two professional players fought, they naturally did not attack from the same spot. They used exquisite dodging skills. Obviously, Key of Solomon's skills were slightly better. However, it seemed like the situation was on Madblade's side. He was fully armored, and his health was too high. He would be able to exhaust the opponent to death. However, the commentary was not optimistic. Madblade's health is 80%, and his armor durability is 66%. Key of Solomon's health is 73%, his magic shield is 31%, and his mana is 68%. The situation is actually very disadvantageous for Madblade. Although he has a lot of health, if his armor durability is depleted, his combat power will drop by at least half. He only has one set of armor, and as long as the opponent has mana, he can create a new magic shield at any time. Boom! Frost fire exploded. This time, there was a knockback effect. Madblade was forced back a few steps. Key of Solomon backed away. His eyes flashed as he thought to himself, not bad. I underestimated him a little, but it won't affect the result. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Key of Solomon chanted a strange demon language. It was like a low murmur. His eyes seemed to be burning, and from the gaps of his scales, countless blue flames surged out. His body suddenly expanded, and he turned into a demon with blue flames. A new UFF was added to his status bar. Demon Talent, True Name Liberation, Primary Stage. All attributes increased by 13%. Lasted for 10 minutes. Health and mana were restored by 30%. Removed all current UFF, including buffs. Immediately after, he took a deep breath. The surrounding flames turned into a burning airflow and were sucked into his mouth. He had an additional 20% of fake health. Fire excitement, and his health reached 120% instantly. The commentator said excitedly, it's here, the talent skill of the demon race. The cooldown time is 3 days. Among all the regular races on the novice planets, the talent of the demon race is the most suitable for actual combat. They are born with self-strengthening skills. It's very sick. Rumble. The situation fell to rock bottom. Frost fire bombarded, and Madblade was ravaged like a storm. The opponent's magic power increased greatly, and his health was overflowing. It was equivalent to him losing so much durability and health for nothing. Key of Solomon continued to cast his magic combo step by step, not giving him any chance. He was calm, just like his prediction before the match. This was a match without any suspense. There was no need to use his trump cards. The Chinese audience was shocked. Looking at the pathetic Madblade on the screen, they became depressed. Oh no, there's no way to fight. It's over already. The Americans are really lucky to have chosen Winterfrost as the opening. All the demon race has this sick skill. They're all like bosses. The heat passed through the armor. Madblade smiled bitterly inside the helmet. Damn, I really can't beat him. No wonder he's the captain of a big club. With his own skills and combat power, the hope of beating Key of Solomon was very slim. However, he was not alone. Although I can't beat you, you're nothing compared to me. Madblade clenched his teeth and played his trump card. Character summon card, Black Star's Arrival. Buzz. A 4-meter-tall, translucent shadow suddenly appeared behind Madblade. It was dressed in black, and the audience was very familiar with its appearance. Who else could it be other than Han Xiao? Isn't that Black Phantom? The audience was surprised. The tall shadow was expressionless. He slowly reached out his hand and pressed on Madblade's head. Zap, zap, zap. Dazzling lightning suddenly lit up. The rampaging mechanical force flowed through the shadow's palm and entered Madblade's body. The next moment, Madblade was surrounded by lightning. What skill is this? What the F***CK? Before the commentator could react, the next scene almost made his eyeballs pop out. Frenzied sword stabbed out with his spear, and Key of Solomon's newly created magic shield was destroyed in one hit. It was as fragile as a bubble. Immediately after, Madblade closed in and smashed his shield into Key of Solomon's shocked face. Bang! The demon flew out like a cannonball and crashed into a house. His HP dropped by 21%. Just one slap from the shield took away more than 1/6 of his HP. His fake HP was gone. The super bonus directly dealt suppressive damage. In an instant, the situation was reversed. The scene quieted down. Only the crackling sound of flames and the sizzling sound of electric snakes could be heard. The audience hurriedly looked at the status bar and was dumbfounded. Black Star's Arrival, plus 247% machinery affinity. Lasts for 3 minutes. From character summon card. Han Xiao. This The commentator opened his mouth and was momentarily at a loss for words. He could only squeeze out a sentence. Insane. Chapter 412. Mad Blade's entire body was covered in lightning and thunder. The lighting effects were gorgeous, making him look even cooler. So he got my machinery affinity. Han Xiao was paying attention to Mad Blade's match. He laughed and said, "This kid is really lucky. He even got this." Through the status bar, the audience saw that this UFF had Han Xiao's name hanging on it. They could not help but be shocked. Han Technician felt that it was very novel to appear in the Players' League in such a manner. When he was creating the ability potion, he had only come up with this idea on a whim. Now, it seemed that other than earning him money, it had also given him a wave of fame. The players were very familiar with Black Star's name. They did not expect to see Han Xiao's character summon card in the competition. However, on second thought, Mad Blade. No, the Chinese players have been following Han Xiao in the galaxy, so it seemed normal for him to have Han Xiao's character summon card. The problem was that the effect of this character summon card was too strong. Who could block 5 times machinery affinity at this stage? Han Xiao's personal attributes were all question marks in the detection information of the players. They had never been able to figure out his true level, but now there was finally a clue. His basic 5 times affinity, no wonder he was so strong. He was probably above level 100. All along, Han Xiao had been a blessing in the eyes of the mechanic class players. Now that he had shown the tip of the iceberg through Mad Blade, the mechanic class players watching the match were very excited. It was as if they saw the great future of their class. Bang, bang, bang. Mad Blade did not dare waste any time. He took large strides and charged forward, jabbing with his gun and continuously exploding. Even though Key of Solomon tried his best to dodge the attacks, the shockwave from the sudden increase in power was able to make his HP drop by a large chunk. Very soon, his HP dropped to around 40%. The magic shield he summoned could not even block a single hit. More than 10 seconds ago, the one being beaten up was Mad Blade. Now, the situation was reversed. Key of Solomon could not fight back at all. He did not dare divert his attention to counterattack. If he did not dodge a single hit, he would be dead. This UFF's boost to the mechanic class is too terrifying. If this continues, I have no chance of winning. After the shock, just now, Key of Solomon quickly adjusted his state of mind. His expression was gloomy. He had thought that he would definitely win this battle, but he did not expect his opponent to have such a powerful trump card. Key of Solomon also had a hidden trump card. His original plan was to win this match, then deliberately lose the following matches so that he could advance and save his trump card for the finals. However, Mad Blade forced him to change his plan. If he kept his trump card, he would lose for sure. If he lost this match, he would not be able to go easy on the following matches. His opponents were all strong opponents, so he would not be able to conserve his strength and would definitely use his trump card. Since that was the case, he might as well use it now. As long as he could win this match, everything would be fine. Mad Blade's sudden burst of power had indeed surprised him, but Key of Solomon quickly found a way to deal with it. He admitted that during the duration of Black Star's descent, Mad Blade was almost invincible. Whoever went up against him would die. However, this state only lasted for 3 minutes. As long as he could drag it out, he still had a chance of winning. Coincidentally, his trump card, Howling Gate, had such an effect. Whoosh! Key of Solomon used his last movement skill, Flame Jump. He disappeared from where he was and appeared in a sea of fire. He opened up a distance of more than 20 meters and quickly took off his necklace. He pressed it on the ground, and his mana instantly dropped by 40%. The surging magic power emitted a misty blue light and flowed into the necklace, giving off a blinding light. At the same time, Key of Solomon started chanting, spreading the frost of death, extinguishing the holy fire of life, building a bridge with the bloodline of the demon race, the most elite invaders. Please respond to my call and let our enemies witness the winter that will freeze the world. Woo. Hum. An ethereal voice that seemed to come from the void sounded, and an icy blue door of light formed by magic rose from the ground. Dark blue flames danced and blocked in front of the Key of Solomon. It was 4 meters tall, and there was a whirlpool-like magic inside the door. Majestic demon warriors more than 3 meters tall walked out of the door of light. They wore black metal armor that was covered in spikes, carried two-handed axes that were black and covered in dried blood, and held magic crossbows that flashed with an icy blue halo. There was also a ranger at the front who was swinging a chain hammer and riding a demon wolf. There were a total of 5 demons. This was the phantom of a scout team from the Extinction Army. He's a summoner. The commentator's tone suddenly rose, and his voice almost broke. The audience's expression changed drastically. One word could describe the image of a summoner in the players' hearts. Beast. In his previous life, the Magic Summoner style and the Mech Legion style were known as the two hooligans. Balance? Skill? Sorry, I've never heard of those things. Anyway, I'm strong. The human wave tactic could drown the enemy. If there were enough summoned creatures, the players could fight against many alone. At the current stage, there was no sign of the army style, but the summoner style was beginning to appear. Of course, there were naturally restrictions for powerful styles. Summoning spells had a failure rate, and they needed a casting medium. Some were specific summoning items, some had to have certain abilities, and some had to sign a contract with the summoned creature. There were also a few forms of existence for summoned creatures. For example, they were real and unique, and they would disappear once they died. Key of Solomon summoned phantom entities, similar to the duplicate monsters in dungeons. They would be summoned again after they died, and there was no end to them. Real entities were mostly elite summoned creatures, and phantom entities were used as cannon fodder. His Howling Door was a pink rare level 60 summoning item that could summon the phantom of a scout team from the demon race. The Demon Scout was a specialty of the Extinguished Army, and the Howling Gate was a personal challenge mission. It was very difficult and could only be completed by players above level 60. However, Club Key had helped Key of Solomon obtain this pink item with their team's strength. The attributes of these 5 demon race appeared in the status bar. Health, 2,500. Attack, 134 to 197. Defense, 40. At this level, the summoner style was still far from complete. Normal summoners could only summon small creatures, such as forest wolves and venomous snakes. Their attributes were not even 1/3 of the demon races, but Key of Solomon could summon 5 demon race at once. A level 60 pugilist player had around 3,000 to 4,000 health. These 5 demon race scouts were equivalent to 3 pugilist health, and their damage was also very impressive. The highest theoretical damage from a round of focus fire was close to 1,000 points. This was Key of Solomon's confidence that he was almost invincible. Not only was he a Frostfire-style demon mage, but he could also switch to the summoner style at any time. The audience was still in awe of the strength of Black Star's descent, but the situation suddenly changed, and everyone was stunned. Damn, summoning a group of elite monsters. It's no different from a boss. There's such a move? Is this person a dog? Key of Solomon ordered the Demon Race Scout and 2 Demon Axemen to surround Madblade, and the 2 archers to protect him and shoot from afar. He did not have much health left, and he was very wary of Madblade's attack, so he hid behind the archers. With a solemn expression, Frenzied Sword raised a shield and spear and charged forward in large strides. His steel armor collided with the 3-headed demon with a loud bang, and the surrounding air was blown away by the impact. The audience only felt that the screen shook for a moment. Boom! Pa! Immediately after, the tip of the spear released smoke and sparks. Madblade swung his spear and hit the 3 demons at the same time. The audience could see that a quarter of the health of the 3 demon race scouts was gone in an instant. With the bonus of Black Star's descent, Madblade's damage was extremely terrifying. Not only that, but the defense of his armor also increased tremendously, and he was not afraid of being surrounded. I just need to stall for 3 minutes. Key of Solomon was frustrated. In his eyes, the first time he used Howling Gate in front of the world, it should have been a crushing victory. However, the first time he used it, it was actually to stall the opponent and cover his retreat. Embarrassing. Just as the two of them were fighting, the number of people watching increased. This match was full of twists and turns, and it attracted more and more viewers. The appearance of summoning made the audience think that the situation would change again, or at least become evenly matched again. However, the next scene was still Mad Blade's one-man show. He beat up a team of Demon Ray Scouts by himself, and the summoner, who should have crushed the opponent, was still being beaten by Mad Blade. Summoner is a very powerful class. Although Key of Solomon is at an absolute disadvantage now, this does not affect the strength of the summoner. The commentator was originally analyzing the reason why the summoner was so strong, but when he saw this scene, he felt that his persuasiveness was greatly reduced. He could only force himself to continue. This does not make sense. Many contestants were also watching this match with heavy hearts. Key of Solomon has a powerful summoning item. Unlike Mad Blade's one-time character summon card, his summoning can be used continuously. This guy is a strong opponent. We have to formulate a plan to deal with him in advance. Although the contestants from various countries were more afraid of Key of Solomon, they could not help but rejoice. Luckily, this Black Star's Descent status is only a one-time use. Otherwise, we would have no chance. Key of Solomon felt that this was the longest 3 minutes. The Demon Ray Scouts that he had high hopes for were all chopped up by Mad Blade like vegetables. He looked at the time. It had only been 2 minutes. Mad Blade's status could last for at least 30 seconds, but he was already at his wit's end. The audience was happy to see this. Awesome. 3 minutes of being a real man. If someone blocks him, he will kill them. If Buddha blocks him, he will kill Buddha. He will create a new world. What Black Star's Descent? This is clearly called the Sky Demon Disintegration Technique. A summoner can be beaten up? How embarrassing. Take off your skirt. Key of Solomon. What can I do? I'm also in despair. This is like a high-level account bullying noobs. TSK. Speaking of which, with so many mechanical bonuses, Mad Blade's Furious Sword is indeed equivalent to a high-level account. Haha, I'm dying of laughter. This summoner is like a team wipe in a boss dungeon. Look at his eyes. How lost? Pooh. The spear pierced into Key of Solomon's chest without any obstruction. He grabbed the spear with a face full of unwillingness and anger. He had used his trump card, but he still lost. He even let the others know about his trump card in advance. He had suffered a huge loss in this battle. He had suffered a double loss. Boom! An explosion occurred in his body, taking away the last bit of his health. Key of Solomon turned into white light and died. The commentator waved his fist and said excitedly, "What an exciting battle. Congratulations to Mad Blade's Furious Sword for obtaining the final victory." The ratings for this match were extremely high, and the number of replays increased rapidly. Players from all over the world were talking about this match, especially the summoner style being beaten up. As Mad Blade had defeated his opponent with Black Star's Descent, UFF, Hanzhao's presence was indirectly increased. This mysterious NC character that had been active in the eyes of the players since the start of the server finally showed the tip of the iceberg of his strength. Han Technician was now a topic of discussion. His past deeds were made into memes by the players. As long as there were related posts, it was very easy to attract a bunch of people to make memes on the forums. This time, it caused the players to speculate about his abilities, guessing what skills he had as a mechanic, what style he belonged to, and so on. Mad Blade had defeated a strong opponent, and his chances of qualifying had increased. Key of Solomon's biggest trump card had been forced out, but he had lost in the end. A summoner that was supposed to be like a boss had become the one fighting the boss. After the match, many reporters asked Key of Solomon how it felt to be beaten up as a summoner. It was as if they were stabbing at the wound in his heart with a knife, and they left angrily. In fact, his Howling Gate was indeed very strong. In the following group matches, in order to ensure his qualification, he could only go all out and use Howling Gate to defeat strong opponents one after another, showing the strength of a summoner. However, the better he performed, the more it showed how overpowered Mad Blade was, or rather, how overpowered Han Zhao's character summon card was. Mad Blade got rid of the entanglement of the post-match interview and hurriedly returned to the stronghold to find Han Zhao. He had tasted the sweetness of the ability potion and had turned the tide. The more of such good things, the better. When he arrived at Han Zhao's room, the people from Dynasty, Temple of God, and Long Sky had already surrounded Han Zhao. They had all watched the match and were fighting to buy Black Star's ability potion. However, there was no new stock on the shop interface. Everyone raised their heads and looked at Han Zhao. This scene gave Han Zhao the illusion that these players were pigs waiting to be fed, and he was the mother feeding them. What are you looking at? You want the ability potion? There's no more. Han Zhao chased everyone out. Chapter 413. The group stage was coming to an end, and the situation gradually became clearer. Long Sky was 8th, and Temple of God was 9th. The difference in points was not small, and Temple of God had to obtain a huge victory in order to suppress Long Sky. However, the next round would be a civil war between the two sides, which meant that no matter who won, one side would definitely step on the shoulders of the other to qualify. Many Chinese spectators felt their hearts tighten. Everyone hoped that their 3 teams could all enter the top 8, but the situation was very difficult. This civil war was already expected when the groups were grouped, but when it really happened, they still felt very nervous. Group C was filled with strong teams, and it was very difficult to obtain points. Many teams that had the strength to qualify did not even make it into the top 10. Long Sky and Temple of God's results were already not bad. Some players calculated the points and came up with a result that made people feel complicated. Long Sky's points were slightly higher. If they deliberately lost this match and allowed Temple of God to obtain enough points, Temple of God could jump to 7th place, and Long Sky would be pushed to 9th. However, the gap between Long Sky and the top team was very small, and the following matches would be easier than the top team. It was very likely that they would return to 8th place. This way, both teams would have a chance to qualify. The worst result of this civil war was that Temple of God would only obtain a small amount of points, and Long Sky would lose once and not obtain any points. It would be equivalent to both sides suffering losses, and this round would be a waste. Not only would Temple of God's situation not change, but Long Sky's ranking would also become unstable. In order to achieve the best result, they could only work together secretly. However, this was only what the spectators thought. How Tian would never do such things. His professionalism would allow him to go all out against any opponent, and it was even more impossible for him to fake a match. His personality was very pure, and he would not think about such things. Long Sky did not plan to hold back at all. This civil war was very tragic. Both sides had armor, and their strength was about the same. The final result of the civil war was Long Sky winning, defeating Temple of God, and stabilizing their ranking. However, Temple of God's hope of qualifying was personally killed by Long Sky. A small portion of Temple of God's fans could not take it anymore and scolded Long Sky, even reaching the level of betrayal. However, most people, including a portion of Temple of God's fans, did not agree with this statement and felt that Long Sky was not wrong at all. This was a competition, and one had to give it their all in a competition. Temple of God naturally stood on the right side and advised the fans not to scold Long Sky, saying that they did not play well this time. However, it was impossible for them not to be angry. Their international competition had come to an end, and their competitor, Long Sky, was stepping on their corpses to continue. However, Temple of God had always been very sociable. Since the situation was already decided, there was no point in being angry or venting. The problem was to stop their losses, which was Li Ji's strength. Under Li Ji's leadership, not only did they not go easy in the last few matches, they even changed their tactics and played even more ferociously than before. It was as if they knew that they would not be able to make it out of the group stage, so they fought with all their might. Their main goal was to make their opponents unable to take too many points from them, indirectly helping Long Sky stall the enemy, creating an image of never giving up and showing the spirit of unity. Then, they found some people to make such guesses on the forums, causing Temple of God's image to become more righteous. They stood at the peak of public opinion, and everyone gave them a thumbs up when talking about Temple of God. This way, not only did they gain fame and reputation, but they also weakened the negative impact of not qualifying. Furthermore, they used this method to form a contrast with Long Sky, who had defeated their compatriots, to show that they were virtuous. The upper echelons of Temple of God were quite satisfied with this result. Among the 4 biggest clubs in China, Temple of God was the most commercialized club. If they lost the competition, the benefits would be higher. Han Xiao did not doubt that they would do so. As the last round of the group ended, the qualifying results were out. 1 Devil, 2 Dynasty, 3 Hydra, 4 Koi, 5 Tulip, 6 Kangaroo Boxing, 7 Rose Knight, 8 Long Sky. The most outstanding team in the group stage was Dynasty. Originally, they had already surpassed Devil in the middle of the competition and became first place. However, in the last few matches, they took the initiative to lose and fell to second place. Because the matches in the finals were determined by the points in the group stage, if Dynasty was first, their opponent would be Long Sky, who was in 8th place. That would not be good. Therefore, after a discussion within the team, Dynasty decided to drop 1 place. However, everyone knew that if Dynasty wanted to, they could have maintained a clean record and entered the finals with a high profile. This ranking was very different from what he remembered. Han Zhao's existence was like a butterfly flapping its wings, changing the situation of the Pro League. He vaguely remembered that one of the top 8 spots in his previous life was Kimchi from Korea, and Kimchi was now ranked outside the top 10. There were quite a few strong teams here, and they had shown in every season of the Pro League in his previous life. Unfortunately, the novice planets they were on were rather far away. Otherwise, Han Xiao would have liked to attract these pro players to his faction. Their ability to do missions was very reliable. Among the top 8, only China and America had 2 teams that entered at the same time. In his previous life, only Dynasty had entered the top 8, and now Long Sky had entered as well. In the singles, Mad Blade had entered the finals in 15th place, and King Admiral had entered the finals in 6th place. 2 Chinese players had also entered the finals. The strong teams and experts from various regions had competed on the same stage, and to achieve such a result, it could be considered an outstanding performance. Galaxy Times made a special episode to explain the results of the teams that had entered the finals and analyze the situation in the future. They believed that 3 teams had the most potential to win the championship: Devil, Dynasty, and Key. With a best-of-5 format, every team would definitely use all their trump cards to target their enemies. The schedule for the finals was released, and the first match was Key vs Tulip. The Chinese team's performance in the Pro League had improved tremendously compared to his previous life. During the group stages, Han Xiao had stayed in Ubarely Hub and temporarily rejected the other mercenary group's offers to rest and reorganize the team. However, he did not stay idle either. He focused on building more machinery, teaching Erosia, commanding the Sunil team to carry out other missions, and accompanying Herluz in his combat training. Now that the group stages had ended, and their ranking had reached his expectations, Han Xiao did not pay much attention to the details of the competition. No matter what the team did next, it would not affect him much. He continued to carry out the mercenary group business. Coincidentally, Floating Dragon Island's chief, butler Jenny sent over a supply mission, and logistics manager Hire applied for a new batch of parts. The seller's team was on a Godora colonial planet in the Gavin star system, and they needed Han Xiao to escort them. Ims did not care about anything. Jenny had always been in charge of everything. Compared to the other 3 beyond grade A bosses of the Shattered Star Ring, Ims did not care about the development of her own organization. The other 3 more or less had their own combat troops, but Ims only had a group of guards. The Black Star Mercenary was her only external combat force. Although it was called Combat Force, it was actually more like running errands. After all, compared to those large fleets, a medium-sized mercenary group was like a speck of dust. Floating Dragon's protection was not for nothing. His Black Star Mercenary was Floating Dragon's field team in name, escorting supplies, hunting enemies, conducting field visits, collecting intelligence, and so on. They often had to do some errands, similar to the daily missions of the faction. The EXP was not much, and the main purpose was to increase the faction favorability. Han Zhao's faction favorability on Floating Dragon had already reached 2,100 points, and their relationship was friendly. Han Zhao brought everyone and set off. Because the players entered the competition through the Gathering Crystal, their positions were not restricted, and they could move together. Although the competition was important, it was also important to hug Han Zhao's thigh. Otherwise, there would be no one to repair their armor. Chapter 414. Tulip defeated Key 3-1 and was the first to enter the top 4. Most of the strong teams kept their trump cards in the group stage, but Key's trump card was revealed in advance because of the battle between Mad Blade and Key of Solomon. Although the Howling Gate was strong, the time between the group stage and the final circle was enough for the other teams to think of strategies to counter. Tulip was strong and stable, and they also had a trump card. They only used it in the top 8. Just as Key of Solomon expected, they were caught off guard. If not for Key of Solomon's exceptional performance in the 3rd round, they would have been crushed 3-0. Key's team was stopped in the top 8. Such a result was far from their goal of winning the championship, and Key of Solomon was furious. On the other side, the Black Star mercenary arrived at the planet where the supplies were and prepared to escort them. A fan-shaped light gold galactic spaceport was suspended in the outer space of a Godora colonial planet, orbiting endlessly along its orbit. The alloy shell was emitting dense magic radiance, and spaceships of various models were parked there. The seller was waiting for Han Zhao to come. His name was Tyrell, and he was a slightly famous businessman in the Gavin Star system. He ran a department store group and had a long-term relationship with Floating Dragon Island's logistics department. Han Zhao had carried out many resource escort missions before, so he was familiar with Tyrell. The group arrived at the spaceport, and a voice sounded from afar. "Haha, Floating Dragon's Black Star. We meet again." Tyrell was a Godora. He had a round body and a warm smile. He quickly walked forward and gave Han Zhao a greasy bear hug. "I'll have to trouble you guys again this time. All the supplies needed by Floating Dragon Island have been packed and listed. Do you want to count them?" He led Han Zhao and the others to the side. Metal boxes were piled up into a small mountain. These were all the supplies purchased by Hire. "We've worked together so many times, so I don't doubt your credibility. However, this is Jenny's request, so let me do a head count." Han Zhao passed the list to Maple Moon and gave her a mission to count the goods. "Understood, understood." Tyrell rubbed his hands and laughed heartily. Transporting supplies was a daily mission, and the reward was 150 Floating Dragon faction favorability. Han Zhao knew Tyrell, and due to his identity as Floating Dragon, Tyrell gave him some discounts. Thus, he often bought things from Tyrell in private, and he trusted Tyrell's reputation. However, since he was working for Floating Dragon, he had to be careful. Logistics was a problem when purchasing resources in the galactic virtual network. Other than those advanced civilizations that had popularized long-distance teleportation equipment, the logistics in the galaxy were usually contracted by special delivery companies, where the seller cooperated with a tour group to airdrop the goods. There were many scavengers in the Shattered Star Ring, and some low-level galactic pirates specialized in robbing logistics spaceships. Therefore, commercial teams would usually hire mercenaries as guards. This was similar to escorts. Maple Moon quickly counted, and the number was correct. Han Zhao nodded and said, "There's no problem. Let's go now. I've already contacted a tourist spaceship. It's docked at port 5468. Tyrell turned around and said to the subordinate behind him, "Decker, bring some people to load the supplies into the cargo hold. Then follow Black Star to Floating Dragon to hand over the goods." The man called Decker nodded and ordered the workers to transport the boxes to the port. He was an ordinary manager of the Tyrell Corporation. He looked very ordinary and did not stand out at all. Everyone stepped onto the stairs of the tourist spaceship. Tyrell stood at the dock and said loudly, "Send my regards to Jenny." Han Zhao waved his hands and walked into the spaceship. After the hatch closed, he wrote a defense mission and gave it to some players. He asked Toulouse to bring them to the cargo hold to protect the supplies while he brought the others to the guest cabin. The spaceship rumbled and took off. This was a small tourist spaceship. There were no other passengers, and Tyrell had booked it. This trip was specifically to transport supplies for Floating Dragon. There were not many people on the spaceship. Other than the 10 or so logisticians and mercenaries, there were also 10 or so workers from the Tyrell Corporation. Decker was their leader. Han Xiao had seen him a few times before, but they did not talk much. However, he realized that Decker had brought a girl on board this time. "You're Black Star?" In the guest cabin hall, as soon as everyone sat down, the girl beside Decker spoke. She tilted her head and looked at Han Xiao curiously. Han Xiao sized her up. This was a universe human girl. She was not very old, about 15 or 16 years old. Her height only reached Han Xiao's chest. She had short dark brown hair, fair skin, beautiful features, a high-nosed bridge, and a pair of lively eyes filled with youthful vitality. "Uncle Decker often tells me stories about you." The girl's eyes roamed around Han Xiao, sizing him up. Decker coughed and said, "This is the daughter of a friend of mine. Her family, cough cough, asked me to take care of her temporarily. She pestered me and wanted to run the ship with me, so I brought her along." "Your Excellency Black Star, this won't be a problem, right?" "No problem." Han Xiao shook his head, looked at the girl, and chuckled. "What's your name?" "Sylvia." "That's a nice name. What planet is your hometown?" Sylvia curled her lips. "Are you checking my account, Uncle?" "Uncle?" Han Xiao was speechless. He was obviously young and handsome, but she was talking nonsense. Sylvia glanced at Han Xiao from the corner of her eyes, changed the topic, and said with a snort, "I heard that you mercenaries have no principles and fight for whoever offers the highest price. I really want to know, isn't the money earned from selling souls hot?" Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. Before he could speak, Decker pulled Sylvia in fear and trepidation, scolded her, and then hurriedly apologized to Han Xiao. "She's not sensible. Please don't take it to heart. It's fine. She's young, so I can understand." Han Xiao waved his hand. Words had no lethality to him, so he naturally did not care. He smiled and said, "This little girl is quite brave. Since she knows we're a group of thugs, she still dares to scold us to our faces. She has some guts. I'm not a little girl." Sylvia's face was slightly angry, and she puffed up her chest. It's not small, but it still needs to be developed." Port Bun looked down and smiled. Suddenly, he realized that Han Xiao had turned to stare at him without saying a word. He quickly stopped smiling, looked down, and sat up straight. The group fastened the straps, and the spaceship quickly entered warp mode. After that, they could move around freely. Sylvia was lively and active. She ran around the spaceship curiously, looking at the structure of the spaceship and marveling at it. Sometimes she would lie on the porthole and look at the stream of light outside the window. Decker smiled bitterly. This is her first time in a spaceship. Sorry for the trouble, as long as it doesn't affect the mission. Han Xiao looked at the lively girl's back and narrowed his eyes. Sylvia, this name sounds familiar. He did not want to let go of any suspicion. He returned to his room and pondered for more than 10 minutes. Finally, he found an image in his memory that matched this name. Female mechanical knight Sylvia? Han Xiao was stunned. He did not expect that the girl he accidentally met would be a famous character. Moreover, in the storyline of his previous life, Sylvia was quite famous, especially among the players. Now, Sylvia was still a young girl. Han Xiao recalled her appearance after she grew up in his previous life. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and she looked valiant. She wore a slender and light mechanical armor with a cape behind her, just like a knight. What was the most important indicator of a female character's charm? Her books. Sylvia had a lot of books. Her beauty was only one of the factors. After all, there were too many beautiful female creatures in the galaxy. The bigger reason was her background, identity, personality, and storyline. Beauty had never been the focus of Han Xiao. He secretly recalled Sylvia's character background. It was a long time ago, so he could only remember the general situation. Sylvia's father was hunted down by a mercenary group and died an unnatural death. She was still very young at that time, so she embarked on the path of revenge. She joined a few organizations and learned mechanic knowledge. She became a galactic pirate and hunted down that mercenary group. In that version of the timeline, due to the Red Empire starting to expand again, everyone in the various star fields was in danger. The large mercenary organizations in the various star clusters in the Shattered Star Ring followed the example of the mercenaries in the Silver Arm Star field and formed the Shattered Star Ring Alliance. It became a super large mercenary organization with tens of millions of members and tens of thousands of spaceships of various models. It was enough to participate in large-scale universe battles. Sylvia was the archenemy of the Mercenary Alliance at that time. The players participated in the events of the Mercenary Alliance at that time. In their eyes, Sylvia was a famous villain. Many players received missions to hunt down Sylvia, but they all failed. Sylvia was very strong. After going against the Mercenary League like this for a period of time, Sylvia often appeared in the eyes of the players. Later, she seemed to have discovered that her father was a bad guy by coincidence. She did not remember the details, but she knew that her father's death was due to her own actions. She then disappeared for a period of time, and when she reappeared, she had changed her profession. She was no longer a galactic pirate, but a member of the Shattered Star Ring's Freedom Army. She helped the people in trouble, dealt with some villains, and did many famous deeds. She also refused any form of remuneration or employment. Everything she did was spontaneous, like a superhero. Although Sylvia was not the main character of any event, she was a famous character like Hela. She often interfered with many events in the Shattered Star Ring. When players wandered in the wild, they would occasionally see her dealing with villains and could help her. She was loved by many people in the Shattered Star Ring. These were all things that happened after the age of 30. Han Xiao shook his head. Sylvia's experience of turning over a new leaf and her change of character from a cynical person to a righteous knight had a lot of entry points for the book, such as, why am I thinking about this? I didn't expect to meet a future celebrity. Han Xiao stroked his chin. For some reason, he felt a little weird in his heart, as if he had missed out on some important information. Floating Dragon Island was currently located in the Rain Star system of the Colton Star Cluster. There was a small stargate in the middle that could be jumped, and the journey would take about 10 days. Han Technician built machinery every day and traded with the players. He did not pay much attention to the Pro League and only looked at the results. The top 4 teams were out, and Long Sky met Devil, who was ranked first with a score of 1-3. It was a pity that they were stopped in the top 8. Dynasty defeated Rose Knight with a score of 3-2 and obtained a spot in the top 4. Japan's Hydra fought Australia's Kangaroo Boxing with a score of 3-1. The teams that entered the top 4 were Tulip, Devil, Dynasty, and Hydra. The next group was very important. It was unknown if the prayers of countless Chinese viewers had been answered, but Dynasty's opponent in the semifinals was Team Hydra. Compared to the stable Tulip and the tyrannical Underworld, Hydra was no doubt a pushover. They had the highest chance of defeating their opponent. The Chinese section of the forum was celebrating the outcome of the match. In the individual competition, King Admiral made it to the top 8, while Frenzied Sword stopped at the top 16. However, he was already very satisfied. He was already overjoyed to be able to make it to the second round of the International League. His results had greatly exceeded his initial expectations. Compared to his ranking in Han Zhao's previous life, Mad Blade was only famous in the Division League in Han Zhao's previous life and did not even qualify for the International League. Now, he was in the top 16 of the first International League. Mad Blade benefited the most, and his position among the Chinese players jumped from a nobody to a superstar. 10 days later, the spaceship exited hyperdrive and was only half a day away from Floating Dragon Island. It was lunchtime, so Han Xiao walked out of the machinery modification room and came to the food room. This was where they usually ate. Many people ate there, and the food was all portable space food. It cannot be said whether it was delicious or not, but it had some taste. Haluz greeted him at the bar, and Han Xiao walked over. Want a drink? Haluz had a bottle of alcohol in front of him, and the alcohol made his face red. I almost forgot that you're an alcoholic. Han Xiao sat down, and the bartender handed him a new glass. Haluz chuckled, picked up the bottle, and poured a glass for Han Xiao. He shook his head and picked up the glass. Just as he was about to take a sip, he suddenly paused, and an unknown sense of vigilance surged in his heart. Effect of spiked liquor, unknown bang. The sound of the collision shocked everyone. They all put down their food and looked over in surprise. Han Shao grabbed the bartender's collar, pressed the panicked bartender onto the bar counter, and said coldly with an expressionless face. Chapter 415. What are you trying to do? The bartender was part of the logistics crew. He could not break free and panicked. Haluz was shocked. Captain, what are you doing? Han Shao pointed at his glass of wine. Someone put something in it. It should be poison. Impossible. I brought the wine. How can I be fine after drinking it? Am I poisoned too? Haluz was shocked. He quickly touched his tongue and throat, but he did not feel any numbness. The wine is fine. It's the glass. The item description of the wine bottle was normal. Only his glass had something added. It could only be that someone put something in the glass beforehand. The bartender who took out the glass was the most suspicious. It was supposed to be a simple daily escort mission. Han Shao did not expect to encounter something like this. He was very curious. Who wanted his life? At this time, the players and workers gathered around. Decker and the others also rushed over after hearing the news. They were all confused. What happened? Han Shao gave a simple explanation. Everyone was shocked. Could it be a mistake? Decker asked. Shaking his head, Han Shao made up a new mission and threw it to the players. You have triggered the mission, test poison. Mission introduction. Your captain is suspected to have been poisoned. Are you willing to help him test the effects of the poison? Mission requirements. Drink strong wine with added ingredients. Reward. Plus 300 Black Star Han Shao favorability, 15 EXP. Remark. Death is possible. The mercenary group players received the notification on the interface. Their eyes lit up. It was the first time they had encountered a mission that could increase Han Zhao's favorability and earn EXP so easily. Dying once was nothing. Just as everyone was about to rush forward and snatch the wine cup, they saw a shadow flash by. Bowsy moved like a rabbit. His speed was extremely fast. He grabbed the wine cup and drank it without saying anything. How did you run so fast? Second Prince was shocked. I'm an agility-type pugilist, and even I can't keep up with your speed. How did you train? Port Bun proudly glanced at the crowd, but before he could say anything, his expression suddenly changed. The veins under his skin bulged, turning into a greenish-black color that crawled all over his face. He opened his mouth wide, but no sound came out. When the other players saw this, they all retreated. There was no one within 3 meters of Port Bun. Port Bun froze on the spot for a few seconds. Then, blood spurted out of his 5 orifices. He fell to the ground and died on the spot. What a man like the wind. He died so quickly. Madblade was amazed. He died just like that. The workers and crew were all stunned. A mercenary had just died in front of them, and his companions were still acting as if nothing had happened. What kind of mercenary group was this? How cold-blooded? How terrifying? Moreover, this group of mercenaries was too loyal to Black Star. Before Black Star said anything, they drank the poison wine and tested the poison with their own bodies. This was not like mercenaries at all. It was more like a fanatical cult. However, the next moment, Port Bun's body turned into white light and disappeared. Then, there was the sound of footsteps outside the door. Port Bun ran over from the respawn point. Decker was shocked. You guys, Han Shao looked at him. We've worked together so many times, and you don't know that we have the nickname Immortal Mercenary Group? I see. I don't know about the rumors in the mercenary world. Decker smiled bitterly. No wonder this group of mercenaries was so calm. They were all immortals. Black Star's name was widely known, but his specific abilities were mainly known in the industry. Other industries did not know much about him. What's the effect of the poison? Han Shao turned around and asked. Port Bun checked the interface notification just now. You have consumed some kind of poison. Undergoing Yindi test. Your Yindi is lower than 280. You have no related immunity skills. You have entered the poison state. High concentration, decaying blood poison. This is a poison produced by some kind of Esper ability. You need to inject the antidote. Current toxicity is 135,135. You will lose 750 HP every second for 8 seconds. Warning: your HP is too low. Please consume the antidote as soon as possible. Your HP is lower than 0. You're dead. Port Bun told him the truth, and Han Xiao nodded. Losing 6,000 HP in 8 seconds is very fatal to players, but it didn't kill me. This means that the person who poisoned me has limited knowledge of me. However, since the murderer was able to plot against me during this trip, it means that he knows my whereabouts. At the very least, he knows that this ship is transporting resources for Floating Dragon Island, and I will definitely appear here. This ship is only so big, so the murderer must be hiding among these people. Furthermore, the name Immortal Mercenary Group did not scare the murderer away. There are only two possibilities. Either he knows that I'm not immortal, or it's revenge. Han Xiao frowned. Many guesses appeared in his mind. Even the players could not be eliminated. He had to be wary of this possibility. He strengthened himself by helping the players, but he had never completely trusted the players. After all, he knew the players too well. He only hoped that his guess was wrong, and that it was not the players who secretly accepted the mission to assassinate him. After verifying that Han Xiao was not lying, pairs of hostile eyes stared at the bartender on the ground. Seeing that the poison was acting up, the bartender was so scared that his face turned pale and his whole body trembled. It's not me. I don't know about this. I only took an empty wine glass from the cabinet. Han Xiao opened the cabinet behind the bar. There were many empty wine glasses inside. He took them all out and filled them with water. Everything was normal. Only his glass was poisoned. He frowned and said, "Of all the wine glasses, only the one you gave me was poisoned. How do you explain that?" I don't know. That glass was placed at the outermost corner. I really just casually took it. The bartender was so scared that he almost peed his pants. Haluz suddenly broke out in cold sweat. If the bartender took the wrong glass, wouldn't I be dead? Your body is strong. The poison won't kill you. Han Xiao casually replied. He stared at the trembling bartender and said, "If it's not you, then someone else did something to the wine glass." "Captain, is a captain here?" The spaceship's captain hurried over and walked out with a pained expression. "I'm the captain of Rainbow Conch. I'm deeply sorry that something like this happened on my ship. I'll do my best to cooperate with you to find the culprit. I want to check the surveillance footage of the spaceship over the past few days to see who came close to this place." "As you wish." Other than the bedroom, most areas of the spaceship had surveillance cameras. The food room was no exception. They could immediately find the culprit through the footage. The bartender was pleasantly surprised. "Then I'm fine. Are you dreaming?" Han Xiao said in annoyance. "Tie him up and bring him along." The captain brought everyone to the main control room. Just as he was about to check the surveillance footage, he was shocked to find that the footage had been cleared. The earliest footage was less than a day ago. All the surveillance footage has been deleted. The captain was shocked. Only I can do something like this. Could the spaceship's system have been hacked, and the culprit could bypass the alarm system? He hurriedly opened the backhand and used his fingerprint to enter the captain's authority. He activated the system's self-check, but did not find any loopholes. Why can't I detect any intrusion? Could the spaceship be completely controlled by the enemy? The captain was sweating profusely. He had no choice but to check the spaceship's operation log, hoping to find the source of the ID that deleted the footage. This small tourist spaceship belonged to an interstellar travel organization. The captain was employed, and his authority was second. The highest system authority belonged to the organization. The captain could not change the log, so even if the culprit controlled the spaceship, they could not change the log unless the culprit's technology was strong enough to bypass the organization's quantum network defense and obtain the highest authority. However, there were no signs of other accounts logging in. Everyone quickly found the operation log to delete the footage. Operation log 007843115, all surveillance footage cleared 22 hours ago. Authority verified. Confirm return, confirm delete. Cleared. Operator, captain's account. Chapter 416. The captain's eyes widened. Why is it my account? I didn't do it. 22 hours ago. I was sleeping then. It's the culprit. The culprit stole my account. But the login password is my fingerprint and iris. How could it be stolen? Everyone looked at him suspiciously. Maybe it was you. There are no surveillance cameras now, so you can act however you want. There are a few possibilities. The upper management of your tour group colluded with other forces to deal with us. It could also be that the other party somehow got the sample of the captain's body password, or there's a disguise ability user hiding on the ship, Haluz said. Everyone's expression changed. They looked at each other suspiciously. Everyone looked like an enemy. Han Xiao raised his eyebrows and looked at the crowd. Everyone on the ship was gathered here. Even Sylvia was here. She hit the edge of the crowd, revealing half of her face to look at him. Suddenly, his eyes moved. Wait, Sylvia? Han Xiao finally realized where the strangeness came from. He looked at Decker and asked, Sylvia is your friend's daughter? Decker nodded and said, Yes, is there a problem? Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. Her family seems to only have her father left. If I remember correctly, that person is not a simple person. I was almost fooled by you. You're quite good at acting. If you confess, I'll be lenient. If you resist, I'll be strict. Do you want to say it yourself? Or do you want me to say it for you? Decker's expression froze. Disbelief flashed across his face. His eyes clearly expressed his shock and confusion. How do you know Sylvia? Although Han Xiao did not know the specific identity of Sylvia's father, he remembered that her father was a villain in the background introduction. That was enough. Decker was just an ordinary employee of a business group. A villain was actually his friend. Although it was not impossible, it was still very strange. Han Xiao shook his head. He should have noticed this long ago. It was just that everything was normal back then, so he did not think too much about it. It seemed that he had been a little lax recently. Due to the 1-month break in the league and the fact that he hadn't experienced any major dangers in the past 9 months, he had subtly lowered his vigilance. Fortunately, he had detected it in time. He couldn't help but be alarmed. At this time, Sylvia walked out with a frown. Her entire temperament had changed. The youthful vigor from before was all a facade. Although her body was still in puberty, the feeling she gave off was no longer that a young girl. Her temperament had become mature. Sylvia stared at Han Xiao. Her tone was complicated, mixed with astonishment. You recognize me? She couldn't figure out how Han Xiao could recognize her identity when it was the first time they met. Logically speaking, Black Star shouldn't know of her existence at all. She should have been hiding in the dark. Sylvia had thought of many possibilities of being exposed, but she never thought that her identity would be exposed, causing her plan to fail. In fact, if he didn't remember Sylvia's character background, Han Technician wouldn't have been able to directly identify the murderer. It was no accident that he suddenly met a future famous person. Black Star, my father was sent to prison by you. You bunch of mercenaries with no bottom line only know how to fight for money. For that, you didn't hesitate to help those tyrannical rulers suppress their suffering citizens. My father could have saved everyone, but you mercenaries harmed him. Sylvia gritted her teeth. Since she had been exposed, she would no longer pretend to be a young girl. The players looked at each other, confused. Had we done such a thing? Maple Moon couldn't help but ask, Little girl, what's your father's name? Langley. How can you forget his name? Sylvia was agitated. Opening the mercenary group interface, Han Xiao glanced at it. He really found this name in the mission history. This was a cooperative mission with the Purple Gold Army to eliminate a rebel base on a certain planet. The rebel leader's name was Langley. So, that guy was Sylvia's father. Han Xiao was speechless. He had become a certain mercenary group that dealt with her father in the background of Sylvia's character. What else could he say? It seemed like it was the butterfly effect again. Not only you, but also the Purple Gold Army. This won't be the first time. I'll hunt you down forever, Sylvia shouted. Bang! As soon as she said that, the sound of a smoke bomb exploding came from behind them. Dark red, poisonous fog rose. You have been enveloped by some kind of poisonous fog. Undergoing END authentication. Your END is lower than 280. You're not immune to related skills. You have been poisoned. Everyone hurriedly turned around and saw that the captain had already put on a gas mask. He was the one who threw out the poisonous fog bomb. At the same time, the mechanical sound of the spaceship's system echoed throughout the spaceship. Automatic navigation changed. Destination is closest to the star. Warming up the hyperdrive engine. ETA, 13 minutes, 48 seconds. Spaceship entering lockdown mode. All gates are locked. I repeat, all gates are locked. Boom. The door of the main control room slammed shut. All the doors of the spaceship were closed. The captain was already prepared. He dashed out before the alloy door on the other side of the main control room closed. He was so fast that Haluz couldn't catch the captain in time. He punched the metal door, leaving a shallow dent. The alloy door in front of them blocked a small portion of the crowd outside. Sylvia was among them. This time, Han Xiao and the rest were all trapped in the main control room. The crew members were all shocked. The captain was with the enemy too? Chi. At this time, the ventilation pipes of the spaceship spewed out dark, red, poisonous fog. The air system had been tampered with long ago. It was all activated by the captain with his authority. Han Xiao held his breath. His eyes flickered. Not only was it an assassination, but the spaceship itself was a complete trap for them. Sylvia could accurately predict their schedule, most likely because she was a tall tree that attracted the wind. At this time, a new mission appeared on the interface. You have triggered an emergency mission, Sylvia's Revenge. Mission introduction. Due to a common hire, you caused Sylvia to lose her father. Now, you are about to welcome the flames of her revenge. Mission requirements. Neutralize Sylvia's revenge method. Mission reward. 120 EXP. TSK. Using the small to win the big. Tricked us, and now wants to send us into the star and burn us to ashes. Not a bad idea. Did I beat up the old, and now the young is coming? Han Xiao chuckled. He was not worried at all. He was very familiar with this move. It was how he dealt with the germinal organization in the past. What do we do now? Haluz looked over. He could breathe and talk normally. His endurance was over 280. The poisonous fog could not hurt him. Her plan is quite interesting, but she missed out on the most important part. The mechanical suit opened up from the necklace. Pieces of armor covered the entire body. The helmet filtered the poisonous fog, and the poison status disappeared very quickly. Han Xiao walked to the main control panel, tapped on the screen, and brought up the spaceship system interface. He moved his fingers, shook his head, and laughed. Chapter 417. The players all activated the filter of their armor, making them immune to the poison gas. They looked at Han Xiao and waited for orders. That captain used his authority to lock onto the spaceship's navigation system. I'll hack into the spaceship system and change the route. You guys blow up the alloy door. Some of you go to the main engine room and insert this chip. The rest of you capture Sylvia and her accomplices. Han Xiao opened his palm. With a flash of lightning, a black chip flew out of his pocket. Understood. Haluz nodded, put away the chip, and swung the battleship slicing blade. Flames gushed out, and the blade hit the alloy door. With an ear-piercing sound of tearing steel, a hole was cut open. Dozens of armored players raised their guns and fired. The alloy door was soon riddled with holes and collapsed. In the poison gas, everyone walked out of the main control room. In front of them was another locked alloy door. The people who were separated earlier were all trapped in the middle of the passage. Many of them were poisoned, and their lives were hanging by a thread. Decker was among them, but Sylvia had disappeared. The players took out gas masks and put them on these people. Decker was barely breathing. After catching his breath, he burst into tears. I was forced. That girl used my family to threaten me and force me to cooperate with her. I really had no choice. I'm sorry. Cut the crap. Where's Sylvia? Haluz asked. She's the accomplice of that captain. She used her authority to open the alloy door and ran away, leaving us here. Bang! Haluz slapped Decker until he fainted. Tie him up. The captain might want to question him later. Gunshots rang out. Everyone used brute force to break through the alloy doors. They were not slow at all. Sylvia had turned the spaceship into a trap, but the spaceship itself could not trap them. This was the difference in strength. Han Xiao guessed that Sylvia's next move was to be the first to reach the escape capsule and escape before the hyperdrive. At the same time, she released all the emergency escape capsules and trapped everyone on the spaceship. However, he was a mechanic, so he could seize control of the spaceship. This was the loophole in Sylvia's plan. Opening up the spaceship's system, Han Zhao's fingers flew like they were a blur as he keyed in countless codes. Very soon, he had infiltrated the system's back end and was met with resistance from the alarm system. In the past 9 months, he had purchased some new advanced knowledge, such as the advanced artificial intelligence technology, which made up for the shortcomings of the network technology. That black chip was an even more powerful auxiliary artificial intelligence. After it was inserted into the mainframe, the speed of cracking the system would be doubled. Alarms buzzed, and the ship's systems echoed. System intrusion detected. Please stop your actions immediately. Because of the limited time, Han Xiao did not go around the alarm and chose to use brute force to solve it. The 13th generation network firewall of the TAC series, the 47-bit algorithm of the Silver Light sequence, randomly generated password wall. Quite advanced. Han Xiao did not stop. As he hacked, he said, "It will take about 5 minutes to break through this system, but there are still 2 minutes before the hyperdrive mode. Sylvia will be taken away in the escape capsule before then. Arosia, go and catch her." Hearing this, Arosia turned into energy and left through the wall. Metal walls were meaningless to her. Only energy barriers could stop her from going through walls. Everyone started to move. Han Xiao stayed in the main control room and focused on cracking the system. Damn it! How did I get exposed? How did Black Star know me? Hurried footsteps echoed in the bridge. Sylvia hurriedly ran, using the captain's authority to open alloy doors one after another and close them after she passed through. The gunshots in the distance were getting clearer and clearer, like the sound of a death knell. It meant that she did not have much time left. Once a direct confrontation occurred, she would not be able to fight back. It was a race against time. Sylvia did not dare to stop. The moist heat was squeezed out by her constricted lungs again and again. She ran until she was out of breath. In order to complete the trap, she used all her savings to hire a freelance assassin. She also found out about Han Zhao's whereabouts through the intelligence network of an organization. Sylvia knew very well that she was too weak. If she wanted to deal with the Black Star mercenary, she could only rely on such schemes. She originally wanted to turn this spaceship into Black Star's grave. Unfortunately, she could only try to protect herself now. Do you regret it? A voice echoed in her heart. Sylvia bit her lips. Many images appeared in her mind. Her father's doting eyes, happy memories from her childhood, seemed to be plated with a layer of warmth. However, the image shattered like a mirror, and the flames engulfed these memories. The mercenaries descended from the sky and scattered the flames, destroying everything. If his father had not sent her away in advance, he would have died tragically under the rain of bullets. After the mercenaries surrounded her, her father was sent to prison. She had been through many hardships for a long time before she could return to her father's stronghold. Her father's stronghold was like a home to her, but now there were only charred ruins left. She still remembered that when she was young, she liked to hide under the shade of an old tree and spend lazy afternoons. However, that tree had been burned to ashes, emitting an unpleasant smell. The once dense shade of the tree was only left with bare black branches. Every time she thought of this, an uncontrollable anger would ignite, burning her nerves and making her lose her rationality. In order to take revenge on this group of mercenaries, it's worth the danger. Sylvia gritted her teeth. Soon, she arrived at the escape pod. There were more than 10 emergency escape pods inside. The captain had just arrived from the other side and complained, "You didn't tell me there would be such a big risk. I want to increase the reward." The turbulence of the spaceship became more and more obvious. Once the spaceship entered the hyperdrive state, it would be impossible to use the escape pod unless they wanted to be torn to pieces together with the escape pod. Sylvia hurriedly pulled down the manual latch of the escape pod. In the sound of the airflow, the extra escape pods were released, leaving only the last two. Just as the two were about to enter, a golden light lit up behind them. Erosia, in her light form, had passed through the wall and arrived just in time. "Let's go." Sylvia gritted her teeth. Just as she was about to enter the escape pod, the captain suddenly pushed her from behind and threw her toward Erosia. In this critical moment, he did not care that Sylvia was his employer. He wanted to use this to buy time. In midair, Sylvia turned around in shock. She did not expect the captain to betray her so suddenly. A ring of energy spread out. Sylvia was sent flying before she hit Erosia. She slammed into the wall and fell to the side, her expression twisted in pain. Erosia straightened her arm, and her forearm turned into a golden energy wave. She swept it like a whip, and the shells of the two escape pods were melted, leaving behind a red hole. It was obvious that they could not be used anymore. The captain's expression changed drastically. Boom! The alloy door collapsed. Haluz and the other players arrived and surrounded the two. At the same time, the spaceship suddenly shook and entered hyperdrive. "It's over." Sylvia closed her eyes in despair. The poisonous gas slowly dissipated, and the locked alloy doors opened one after another. The spaceship stopped its hyperdrive and floated quietly in space. Breaking through the spaceship system was only a matter of time for Han Xiao. After controlling Sylvia, he did not feel any pressure and easily took over the captain's authority. At this time, the entire spaceship was under his control. He canceled the navigation to the star, and the crisis was naturally resolved. Sylvia felt that her plan was fatal. In reality, it was not much of a threat to the current Black Star mercenary. With the mercenary group's strength, it was enough to break through the situation. Han Technician did not panic at all. Sylvia was still too young and inexperienced at this time. It would not be so easy for him to screw up. The interface notified them that the mission was completed, and they received 1,200,000 EXP. The players were elated. The matter came to an end. All the crew members were gathered in the cabin hall, surrounded by mercenaries with guns aimed at them. In the middle were Sylvia, Decker, and the captain, all tied up tightly. Han Xiao sat on the sofa with his elbows on his knees. His upper body leaned forward, and he slowly scanned the three of them. His aura was like a dragon crouching down, and it was very oppressive. It was like a three-way interrogation. The crew members and the workers present did not even dare to breathe loudly, even if they were not the targets of the interrogation. Decker hurriedly explained the situation. A few days ago, the Terrell Group had prepared the resources for Floating Dragon and confirmed that he was in charge of the handover. After that, he was found by Sylvia and forced to cooperate. For you to be able to know our whereabouts, there must be other organizations helping you behind the scenes. You're just a little girl. You don't have such a huge intelligence network. Han Xiao was expressionless. Furthermore, you were able to bribe the captain to take the risk to deal with a mercenary group. You must have relied on the power of that organization. Sylvia stared at Han Xiao with a stubborn face. It was as if she had made up her mind not to say anything and was not willing to lower her head in front of her enemy. Bang! A gunshot suddenly sounded. Green smoke curled up from the muzzle. Spots of blood splattered all over Sylvia's delicate face. Her body trembled, and she turned around to look. She saw that there was a bloody hole in the captain's head. The shocked expression froze on his face, and he slowly collapsed. The pool of blood slowly expanded. The captain had thought that Han Xiao would interrogate him, and was still thinking about what to say in order to save his life. However, Han Xiao was not interested in him at all and directly gave him a bullet. His eyes were wide open, filled with unwillingness. The corpse suddenly changed shape and turned into another man. This was the Esper ability of disguise, which was especially suitable for infiltration. Haluz's eyes sparkled. I guessed correctly. There is indeed an Esper with the disguise ability. Seeing this, Han Xiao immediately guessed what had happened. Looks like the original captain died a long time ago and was replaced by this person with the ability to disguise himself. He's an assassin hired by you. The one who poisoned the wine should also be him. Sylvia bit her lower lip and turned her head away to not look at the corpse. Even though she was still stubborn, her body could not help but tremble, and her eyes were filled with undetectable moisture. Only when faced with the fear of death did she behave like a young girl. You should kill me too." Sylvia closed her eyes and tried her best to put on an expression as if she was not afraid of death. "I don't object to that." Han Xiao did not comment. The hot muzzle pressed against Sylvia's fair and smooth face. Through the muzzle, he could clearly feel that Sylvia was trembling more and more violently. NT. Chapter 4:18. Buzz. At this time, a virtual image appeared in the middle of the hall. It was a lizard-like being in luxurious clothes. He scanned the hall and looked at Han Xiao with a confused tone. "Our organization's spaceship has been hacked. Blackstar, did you do this? Your reaction is too slow. I've been waiting for you." Han Xiao leaned back on the sofa and stared at the lizard-like being. He temporarily put the matter of Sylvia aside. This spaceship belonged to an interstellar travel agency, and the lowest level of authority was in the hands of the organization. Once the spaceship was taken away by an outsider, the organization would immediately notice and be able to locate the spaceship remotely unless the connection was cut off. However, doing so would not only require hacking skills, but also various interference and hacking hardware to be able to block the lowest level of authority. Han Xiao had taken the captain's authority, and he had long known that the actual owner of the spaceship would come looking for him. Although the spaceship was under his control, there was no way to block the owner's remote surveillance. With his skills, it would take him a few days to half a month to change the basic settings of the spaceship and remove the control of the lowest level of authority. The protection of the lowest level of authority was even tighter, and the difference in difficulty was like the difference between hacking into a small or medium-sized enterprise and hacking into a government office. The lizard-like being originally thought that the spaceship had been stolen, but looking at the situation, it seemed that there was more to it. He suppressed his anger and asked for the reason. Han Xiao explained the entire process in a concise manner. It was not too much to know that the captain had committed a heinous crime. However, what Han Xiao was interested in was her strength, not her personality, beauty, and other messy things. There were many types of enemies, such as the Germinal Organization and Darkstar, competitors who were both friends and foes, enemies that were created by misunderstandings, and so on. In his opinion, Sylvia was an enemy that was created by misunderstandings, and Han Xiao knew what kind of misunderstandings it was. Langley himself was a traitor, but as a father, he would definitely hide something from his daughter or even lie to her. He would definitely find excuses for his actions. Therefore, Sylvia thought that her father's actions were against the tyrannical ruler and that he was the pioneer of liberating the people. According to his experience in his previous life, Sylvia was still considered an upright person. She was just blinded by hatred and lies, and her mind was twisted. If she knew what kind of person her father was, she might give up on revenge like in his previous life. However, Han Xiao already knew the truth, and he knew how to quickly change Sylvia's perception. To him, it was a piece of cake, but that was not the key. The key was, what benefits could he gain? I might trigger a related mission with a reward. Then, she still has some value. So be it. I'll let her live for now and complete the mission. Then, I'll deal with her according to the situation. If she's still hostile, I'll bury her on the spot. Han Xiao thought. As for letting her go, that was not possible at all. From the perspective of a businessman, Sylvia was not only a person but also a valuable resource. He was not rich enough to waste money and resources on the street. With that in mind, Han Xiao stood up and said, "Pack up and prepare to leave. Lock her up." Sylvia's little face was full of shock. She looked up and asked, "Where are you taking me?" Han Xiao said calmly, "To see your father." Sylvia's eyes widened in disbelief. Chapter 4:19. Agalo Prison City was a giant fortress made of steel. It was located on the Agalo Alliance Garrison satellite, one of the 7 satellite planets of the New Phylon Alliance's main planet. It was used to imprison political criminals were criminals, traitors, and other important criminals of the Alliance. Sylvia's father, Langley, was locked up inside. The New Phylon Alliance was a small civilization alliance in the Rainstar system of the Colton star cluster in the Shattered Star Ring. There were countless civilizations in the galaxy, and there were countless political alliances like this. Some civilizations had formed alliances to help each other. Normally, civilization alliances were regional. Most of them were formed when the civilizations in a certain region decided to develop together and rule together. The New Phylon Alliance had 8 members, all of whom were small galactic civilizations between the star system level and the planet level. These civilizations were all once countries on the same planet, and their mother planet was called Phylon. After Planet Phylon's technology entered the galaxy, the countries could not come to an agreement, so they decided to split up. There were so many resources in the universe waiting to be developed, and there was no need to stick to a single tree. Therefore, the strongest countries stayed on their mother planet, and the other countries took immigrant spaceships and migrated to other planets. In the end, they all developed and became different civilizations. Fundamentally speaking, these civilizations had the same root, and their technology and culture were closely connected. Therefore, after many years of splitting up, they finally united again and formed the New Phylon Alliance. This was the strongest organization in the Rainstar system. In his previous life, this kind of situation had been discussed on the forums. Earth could not be unified, so maybe it was not a bad idea to use this kind of civilization. Of course, this was more ideal. The problem of limited resources had always been very complicated, and it was still a problem whether Earth could develop to the galaxy level. Now, the Han technician did not need to worry about this problem anymore. Langley used to be a high-ranking military officer of a country, a warlord who could dominate an area. He had a good life, and his salary was not low. However, one day, he used his influence to incite the army and secretly colluded with many people to gather a group of rebels, wanting to form a country. He called it an uprising, but in reality, he committed crimes and built his stronghold into an impregnable fortress. He fought with his old boss for many years, and in the end, he was beaten until he could not breathe. The Black Star Mercenary was one of these mercenaries, and they accepted the Purple Gold Army's invitation. A total of 7 mercenary groups worked together to complete this mission. At this time, Han Xiao was piloting the Rainbow Conch and arrived at the territory of the New Phylon Alliance. He had reported in advance, and the Alliance's Affairs Department welcomed the mercenaries who had worked with them before and agreed to his request to visit the prisoners. The spaceship landed at the Agalo Alliance Garrison's satellite port, and they took the ground vehicle to Prison City. Han Xiao only brought a few people on this trip. Erosia, the tied-up Sylvia, and a few players including Pork Bun. The others were waiting on the spaceship. This time, he only wanted to let Sylvia see her father, so there was no need to make a big fuss. Dude, why are you doing this? In the hovering tank that was steadily moving forward, Sylvia had a complicated expression. When the assassination failed a few days ago, she thought that she was dead for sure. She did not expect that not only did Han Xiao not kill her, he even brought her to see her father. During the few moments when she was awake, she wondered if she was dreaming. Without the Alliance's permission, she would not be able to enter the heavily guarded Agalo prison city. She thought that she would never have the chance to see her father. Sylvia did not understand why Han Xiao would help her. I want you to know that your hatred is meaningless and that it is not worth it to die for it. At the same time, I want to let your father know about your death. I want to see his expression for killing his own daughter because of a lie. I love to kill people. Han Xiao shrugged. He was too lazy to look at Sylvia's angry expression and open the interface. After sparing Sylvia's life, a new mission was triggered. The requirement was to let Sylvia see the so-called truth. The reward was still passable, 54 EXP. Furthermore, there was no need to investigate the truth. He could just ask her father directly. In the background of the character in his previous life, Sylvia's father was blown to pieces by the group of mercenaries who did not hold back. Now, he was captured alive by Han Xiao. Because the reward for capturing him alive was higher, he let Langley live, which made things more convenient. Agalo Prison City was very majestic. There were many guards, and many snipers and machine gunners were stationed at the top. The searchlights dyed the night sky as bright as day. They successfully entered the prison, and a warden came to welcome them. Blackstar, I've heard a lot about you. This warden had a beard and a forthright personality. He shook hands with Han Xiao and laughed enthusiastically. My friend Barney is serving in the 37th Field Army. He once participated in the annihilation of Langley's stronghold and fought side by side with the mercenaries. He has seen how powerful you are and often talks about you to me. I've been bored in this lifeless prison city every day, and I've finally met someone as famous as you. You flatter me. Han Xiao maintained a reserved smile and exchanged a few words with ease. He then followed the warden forward. Soon, they stopped in front of the metal door of a single cell. There was only one door left. Sylvia was excited and wanted to rush in to see her father. However, Han Xiao grabbed her shoulder and stopped her from moving. Warden, I want to meet Langley alone first. No problem. The warden nodded. What do you want to do to my father? Sylvia was like a kitten with its hair standing on end. Her eyes were burning with flames as she bit Han Xiao's palm. However, she could not hurt Han Xiao. Instead, she was shocked until her head was dizzy. A 13 reflected damage appeared on top of her head, and the word immune appeared on Han Xiao's body. What do I want to do to him? Good question. I want him to be less dignified when he sees you. It's best if he's missing an eye or an ear. Han Xiao curled his lips and walked into the cell alone. The metal door closed behind him, cutting off Sylvia's roar. The light in the room was dim. The cage was heated by electricity and divided into two areas. Inside the cage was the cell. Langley leaned against the black wall that was covered in moss and dirt. His face was covered in stubble, and his eyes were lifeless. He looked much older and more dispirited. Hearing the noise, Langley thought it was the guard. He subconsciously turned around, only to see the nightmare that was engraved in his heart. His expression quickly turned into horror as he jumped up. It's you. Why are you here? Are you afraid of me? Han Xiao was expressionless as he walked to the front of the cage. Shouldn't you be thanking me? If it were any other mercenary, it would be difficult for them to pick up your corpse. Would you still be standing here like this? Although they were separated by the cage, Langley did not feel safe at all. He hurried to back off, and his back hit the wall. His throat moved, and he swallowed nervously. The pain in his knees was getting more and more intense. He still remembered the situation at that time. A group of armored mercenaries descended from the sky and slaughtered their way into his territory, cleaning up his army like cutting vegetables. The mercenary in front of him waved his hand and summoned hundreds of machine cannons. At least 1,000 people died in his hands. He killed his way to him and shot through his knees twice. The pain was so excruciating that he almost suffocated. Until now, Langley could only stand up with the simple nerve braces that had been implanted into his knees. Let's cut the crap. I'm here to find you, Han Xiao said casually. Your daughter, Sylvia, I don't know what lies you told her, but she believed your bullshit and thought that you were a great man who liberated the people. She wanted to avenge you and tried to assassinate me. What? Langley's expression changed drastically. He pounced in front of the railing and grabbed onto the heated railing with all his might. He did not care that his palm was burned by the high temperature and gave off a burnt smell. He was so close to Han Xiao's face that his face was filled with anxiety and anger. What did you do to her? What else? Han Xiao made a knife-wielding gesture with his hand. I killed her, of course. I shot her through her chin and opened a hole in the back of her head. Her brain and blood sprayed all over the wall. One of my subordinates thought that she was pretty and was going to peel her face off and use it as a specimen. Langley almost fainted. His daughter was all that kept him alive. His expression became twisted. Anger, regret, heartache, despair, hatred, and other emotions flashed across his face. He let out a howl like a dying beast and roared crazily. Even his fear of Han Xiao was forgotten. I will kill you. I will definitely kill you. Han Xiao calmly looked at the enraged Langley. When his voice was hoarse from all the shouting and he could only stare at Han Xiao while breathing heavily, Han Xiao slowly said, "All right, enough joking. Your daughter is just outside the door. I've caught her. This time, I brought her here to see you." Langley was stunned and could not react in time. His emotions fluctuated greatly, and he felt like he was about to collapse. He sat on the ground with a plop, and his trembling finger pointed at Han Xiao, but he could not say anything. Han Xiao squatted down and looked into Langley's eyes. "You're a smart man. It's up to you whether I kill your daughter or not." Langley's expression changed a lot. He lowered his head and fell silent. "Speak. I don't have time to wait for you to consider." Han Xiao knocked on the cage impatiently. "I'm not a good person, but you're worse than me." Langley's eyes were complicated as he said hoarsely, "What I'll do is tell her everything. I've been a high-level spy planted by another force since the beginning. I'm under their control. Everything I've done is to overthrow the order of the new Phylon Alliance. I'll let her know that I've been lying to her. I'm not the kind of person she thinks I am at all. I'm just a despicable traitor. I'm a villain who destroyed thousands of families for my own selfishness. I'll destroy my image in her heart and make her completely disappointed in me. Her father, do as you deem fit." Han Xiao stood up. Langley looked up at Han Xiao. "Will you let my daughter go if I do that?" Han Xiao did not bother to answer. He turned around and walked to the door, leaving behind a sentence. "In short, if the result of the conversation is not to my liking, I'll fulfill what I said just now. I'll only give you this one chance." He opened the door and left the cell. The first thing he saw was Sylvia anxiously glaring at him, but her eyes could not help but glance at the gap of the door. "Go in. You only have 10 minutes. Han Xiao waved his hand and asked Erosia to let go of Sylvia. Sylvia rushed into the cell impatiently, eager to see her father. After closing the door, the jailer pulled up the surveillance video and monitored the conversation between Sylvia and Langley outside the door. He could clearly see the changes in Sylvia's expression. From the anxiety at the beginning, it gradually turned into shock, and then a fierce argument. Even through the thick iron door, he could vaguely hear Sylvia's uncontrollable roar. In the end, tears burst out of her eyes. 10 minutes are up. The jailer opened the door and brought Sylvia out. She was in a daze. Her eyes were dull, and there were still traces of tears on her face. She had lost all her fighting spirit. She was lifeless like a walking corpse. The vitality from 10 minutes ago no longer existed. It was as if the belief she had always held on to had collapsed. Just now, she realized that the radiance of her father in her heart was actually built on lies. She had been deceived for more than 10 years. He was not a great person. Everything he did was despicable. He deserved to end up like this. Even if the mercenaries did not interfere, he would have been wiped out by the army sooner or later. If it were not for Black Star, her father might not even have survived. The world seemed to have been turned upside down. The memories of her childhood that were filled with warm sunshine seemed to have changed. Everything was a lie. Her heart felt like it had been shot into a sieve by 1,000 bullets. She could not digest such information in a short period of time. Her vision seemed to be spinning. All the sounds became distant and could not be heard clearly. It was as if she was isolated from the world. Plop! Sylvia fell to the ground and fainted. Through the gap of the slowly closing door, Han Xiao took one last look at Langley. The leader of the rebel army seemed to have aged dozens of years, but his face was very calm. There was even a trace of relief. Shaking his head, Han Xiao grabbed Sylvia's back collar and carried the little kid on his shoulder like a sack. He curled his lips. Chapter 420. The group came to the resting room, and the head guard left after saying a few words. Only Han Xiao and a few others stayed in the room. The mission is done. Next, it's time to deal with her. Han Xiao threw Sylvia on the chair and looked at the unconscious girl with a thoughtful expression. I'll let Sylvia know about her father's deeds. Based on her experience in the previous life, she should change, but I can't say for sure. First, Sylvia only learned the truth after many years of fighting. At that age, she was more mature and adaptable. Now, she's still a child, so she might still hate me or run away temporarily. Second, Langley died long ago in the previous life, but he's still alive now. I can't say for sure how it will affect her, but there's a high chance that it will be beneficial. After thinking about it, Han Xiao decided to wait and see Sylvia's reaction before making a decision. From his perspective, keeping Sylvia would naturally create more value. There was no way he would let go of a resource that had been delivered to his door. He even thought about looking through the employment resume again to see if there were any more opportunities like this waiting for the opportunity to come. Han Xiao was about to reach out and slap Sylvia awake when he suddenly remembered that Pork Bun was beside him, so he didn't do it. He took 2 steps back and turned to Erosia. "Wake her up." Erosia walked forward and slapped Sylvia's face. Sylvia slowly woke up. My face is so numb." Sylvia opened her eyes and felt that her face was numb and painful. She looked around blankly and saw Han Xiao. She was about to be angry, but she suddenly remembered what happened before she fainted. Her anger disappeared and her mood sank. She lowered her head and looked at her feet with a dejected expression. She thought that her father was very noble, but the truth was that Langley was a traitor and a separatist. Even without Black Star, her father would have been defeated by the other mercenaries sooner or later. On the contrary, because Han Xiao held back, her father survived. Her hostility toward Han Xiao naturally disappeared. If the target of her vengeance was a traitor, even if it was her own father, Sylvia would feel that what she had done was wrong. Langley had only himself to blame for his fate, and there was no justice that could be sought for him. The radiance of her father in her heart collapsed. Sylvia's feelings toward Langley became complicated and conflicted. She believed that her father's love for her was real, but what he did was beyond what she could accept. Her father had been lying to her all this time, so of course, it was impossible for her not to blame him. As for whether or not Han Xiao had forced her father to say that, this doubt disappeared in a flash because Han Xiao had done it too obviously and confidently. She knew that it was impossible after thinking about it. She was just a little girl who had failed to assassinate him. Why would the leader of a famous mercenary group go through so much trouble to fool her? Han Xiao had captured Langley personally. If it was not because he knew her father's true background, why would he suddenly bring her here to interrogate her father personally? Furthermore, her father had told her in great detail. The crimes of treason, espionage, eavesdropping, and leading a separatist group were all true. Perhaps when she was investigating in the past, she still had hoped that those suspicious points were all framed on her father. However, the instigator had personally told her everything, shattering all of her fantasies. Sylvia looked at Han Xiao with a complicated expression. Although this mercenary group leader had been scaring her along the way, his actions were truly helping her. After her father was captured, she had experienced the fickleness of human nature. This kindness from a stranger caught her off guard and made her feel very guilty. When the anger that burned her reason subsided, she said this sentence from the bottom of her heart and with sincerity. "Thank you. You're a good person. Also, I'm very sorry." "I'm really sorry." Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. "Yo, it seems like the soul modification project was quite successful. As expected, whoever started the trouble had to untie it. Our leader is known as Master Han. What do you think?" Port Bun put his hands on his hips and laughed. Han Xiao pretended not to hear and sized up Sylvia at this moment. This girl was no longer irritable. She looked quiet and delicate. After being captured for many days, she looked a little dusty, but the dust on her face could not hide the beauty of her facial features. As a popular character in the manga world in his previous life, he could see that Sylvia was a beauty in the making. "I don't care about other things first. Tell me, which organization helped you track my whereabouts?" Han Xiao asked in a deep voice. Sylvia did not hide anything and told him everything. "It's an organization that sells information called Mythical. I took out a portion of my savings and asked them to keep an eye on your whereabouts to buy this information. The disguise ability user I hired was a freelance assassin. He and I worked together to formulate the assassination plan. The poison gas and venom were all his things, but he was already killed by you." Sylvia paused and suddenly realized that Han Xiao had killed another person but kept her alive. Was it because he knew her? At this point, she finally asked the question that had always been in her mind. How do you know me? Did my father tell you about me? It's just a coincidence. Han Xiao brushed her off and thought about the intelligence organization called Middle. Intelligence organizations were generally neutral. If their customers requested information about certain people or organizations that they could not afford to offend, they would refuse to sell it. Not provoking people who were too powerful was an unwritten rule of the intelligence organizations. In the eyes of the intelligence organizations, Han Xiao was obviously not qualified. He was also a popular character. This way, he could indirectly increase the popularity of his faction by the players and increase the popularity of his faction through various methods. However, after she joined his faction, the galactic pirate career that the players loved to talk about would not appear again. After all, she had a foundation. After some training, she would definitely be as interesting as in his previous life. As for the possibility of nurturing a tiger, it was not that Han Technician was arrogant. Even the player's growth rate could not compare to his. If he did not even have this much confidence, why would he still be in the universe? He might as well go back to the Blue Star and raise pigs. Chapter 421. The group returned to the spaceship. Sylvia was obviously still not used to her new identity and was a little reserved. Han Xiao got the three Volga brothers to teach her the basics while he was pulled aside by Haluz. You let her join our team? Haluz asked with surprise. Han Xiao briefly explained the process, glanced at him, and said, You have a problem with that again? No, I have no prejudice against a little girl, but she has no combat ability. How can she be a mercenary? She has talent. With some training, she won't be worse than you. Haluz's mouth twitched. Comparing a little girl to me, I feel like you're insulting me. Hee, you're thinking too much. I'll only insult you during sparring. Han Xiao laughed and turned to look at Sylvia. She was surrounded by players and did not know what to do. This was Black Star's traditional welcoming ceremony. In his previous life, Sylvia had gone through many organizations before she finally obtained super knowledge and showed her potential. Now that she had joined his faction, if he wanted her to be useful, Han Xiao naturally had to teach her super knowledge. According to Sylvia's path in her previous life, the most suitable path for her was the mechanic class. Han Xiao stroked his chin and decided to train her personally. Floating Dragon Island was also in the Rainstar system. Han Xiao set up the spaceship's autopilot, left the new Phylon Alliance, arrived at Floating Dragon, and handed over the resources. Although Decker was coerced, he had participated in the assassination. Tyrell was furious when he found out and fired Decker on the spot. Even if there was a reason for it, he did not want to use someone who harmed the interests of the organization. After that, Tyrell apologized sincerely. Han Xiao would never let go of an opportunity to take advantage of him. This time, he asked for a higher discount as compensation, and Tyrell agreed immediately. He was different from the tour group that Rainbow Conch belonged to. He had a very close business relationship with Floating Dragon, so it was easier to talk to him. Speaking of the tour group, a group of lizard men came to Floating Dragon Island to receive the spaceship. At the dock, the tour group had already arrived. After transferring the compensation to Han Zhao's account, they took back the Rainbow Conch. After all the goods were unloaded, Han Xiao watched as these people left in the spaceship. He shook his head, took out his galactic communicator, and prepared to call a ship. This time, Floating Dragon Island's guard captain, Wilsander, walked over and joked, I heard you were assassinated. It's just a child's play. Han Xiao glanced at him. Are you interested? Of course. I have to stay on this island every day to maintain law and order. Do you think my life is very interesting? Wilsander said in annoyance. After chatting for a while, Han Xiao sent Wilsander away and went to the side. He opened the forums and followed the competition. After the episode with Sylvia, the Pro League was finally over. Countless people were discussing it on the forums, and he roughly watched the competition. In the semifinals, Dynasty defeated Hydra 3-2 and advanced to the finals. On the other side, Tulip defeated Devil. In the finals, Dynasty and Tulip were opponents, and the viewership of the finals was through the roof. Han Xiao did not watch the recording, but looking at the content of the discussion posts, it seemed that the battle was very exciting. It was very lively, and they fought at the peak level of professional players, which opened the eyes of the players. In the end, it was a pity that Dynasty made a small mistake when the score was 2-2. However, Tulip seized the opportunity and snowballed into victory, causing them to lose the match. Tulip was terrifyingly stable. When facing them, any small mistake would become the key to turning the situation around. As the results of the finals were decided, the first season of the Pro League ended in front of everyone's eyes. Tulip was the champion, Dynasty was the runner-up, and the semi-finalists were Devil and Hydra. In the singles competition, the champion was a German player. His precise German craftsmanship was terrifying, and King Admiral was in the top 4. Among all the Chinese players, King Admiral's results in the Pro League were the most dazzling, reaching the international level. As the top player in China for many years, such a result undoubtedly strengthened his position. On the forums, the viewers of the various countries were commenting on their own teams. Although it was a pity that Dynasty did not win the championship, the Chinese players were still very happy. At least they were the runner-up, surpassing most of the other teams. The first season of the Pro League could be said to be a success, and many foreign viewers were even fans of the Chinese teams. Compared to the rankings in his previous life, the results this time were much better. In his previous life, China only had one semi-finalist, but now there are 2 Chinese teams in the top 8. Long Sky was in the top 8, and Dynasty was the runner-up. There was also improvement in the singles competition. In his previous life, King Admiral was the only player in the top 16. Now, there was Madblade, who had won glory for the country and enjoyed a triumphant return. The results were much better than in his previous life, and the only reason was because of Han Technician. The players who followed him had good results, and his own influence would also increase subtly, expanding the potential market. Han Xiao was very satisfied with the performance of the players. Dynasty was overjoyed with such results. Even Second Prince, who loved to talk big, had a happy face and did not scold his captain, which was rare. Long Sky's ranking was not bad, but it was not bad. However, Hao Tian was not satisfied. His attitude of working hard never stopped. Madblade was in the top 16 of the singles competition, and he was very satisfied. This was a result that he did not even dare to imagine in the past. Most of the Chinese players were satisfied with their own results, but Temple of God was a little jealous of Dynasty and Long Sky's results and praise. In comparison, Temple of God's performance in the first season was much dimmer. After the Pro League ended, all sorts of follow-up programs took place. The various programs reported and commented on the Pro League, the various teams held press conferences, and the final award ceremony. However, these were not the focus of Han Zhao's attention. The end of the first season also meant the version update was coming. The last version update was 3 years ago. To Blue Star, the sudden appearance of these players had caused a wave of panic, and the version update from version 10 to version 20 would cause these players to disappear again. Usually, 6 days in the game was equivalent to 1 day in real life for the players, and the flow of time was stable. However, during the version update, the time connection between the 2 sides would be broken. The version 10 update would take 1 year in the game, but to the players, it would only take 2 to 3 days. The time span of each version update was different. The players would enter Galaxy at different points in the timeline, and it was usually a major event or disaster that formed the version. When a version update comes, these players will not be around. Without these useful cannon fodders, I will have to be more cautious. Furthermore, there will not be a way to quickly harvest experience and money in a year, so it's the best time to find those missions with potential. As for the specific actions, I will need to make a plan. Han Xiao fell into deep thought. Chapter 422. The main members of the mercenary group were the players for the time being. When they disappeared, the only team that he could command would be the Sunil squad. During the time that the players disappear, the income of the mercenary group will decrease, so I can temporarily close down and free up time to recruit more people. When version 20 starts, The mutation disaster will erupt, and the Blue Star players will start to connect with the galaxy. Coincidentally, during the version update period, I will have time to prepare. Now, he had only brought about 50 players, and he had already created a huge profit for himself. Version 20 was the time when profits would explode. Just thinking about it, Han Technician was already looking forward to the next year's harvest. His goal was to accept thousands of players and make the Black Star Mercenary the faction that guided the players into the galaxy. Of course, this was not as easy as it seemed. He had hidden competitors, which were Ghidorah and Darkstar. These two organizations would use the planets as battlefields during mutation disaster, and they would engage in local battles. Under such circumstances, the players would choose a faction, and if Han Shao wanted to interfere, it would be like stealing food from a tiger's mouth. However, the benefits were obvious. Both sides were focused on fighting, and only he was targeting the players. His position in the hearts of the players, as well as the faction influence and sense of belonging created by Pork Bun's show, would attract the players. The more players he recruited, the better. This meant that he would have to make ample preparations. The so-called preparations included various benefits, such as equipment, missions, rewards, and so on, to increase his strength and influence. The second was the measures to deal with the mutation disaster. The former was targeted at the players, and the latter was targeted at the main storyline. I have about 800,000 ANAs, which is enough to buy 2 high-end knowledges and complete the class advancement mission. However, I am currently level 95, and when I reach level 100, I am still stuck on a class advancement mission. Even if I spend all my money, I will only be able to level up 5 times. The most cost-effective way is to get a subclass first, and take a look at the class advancement requirement when I reach level 100. If I cannot complete it in a short time, I will not be in a hurry to spend the 800,000 ANAs. I still have around 1.5 billion EXP. I don't have enough EXP to reach level 120. Not to mention, I still have to gamble on recipes and level up my skills. Since there were no players to harvest in this year, Han Shao started to plan carefully. Level 100 was the second chance for his race evolution. He had obtained the Void genes from the Void Dragon Bone Marrow, and it would affect the path of his race evolution. The improvement would be especially great, and he still wanted to advance. Secondary professions are easy to find, but those that are too rare are more troublesome. Han Shao searched through his memories. Those fancy and rare subclasses usually required all kinds of complicated operations to obtain. If the difficulty was too high, he would have to put in too much effort, and if the difficulty was too low, it would not be suitable for the mechanic class. Subclasses were just decorations to him. He did not pursue rarity. He only wanted them to be compatible with a mechanic class. If that's the case, an attribute class isn't bad. Just nice, I can get this class in Uberly Hub. Although it's not rare, its effects are simple. Han Zhao's eyes lit up. After completing the daily mission of transporting goods on Floating Dragon Island, Han Shao was called home by Ames as usual to ask about the progress of the search for her teacher. He then brought everyone back to Uberly Hub to rest. The professional players had just finished a match and were tired. They were all in agreement. Running around in the hub city was much more relaxing, almost like a holiday. However, Han Shao was not taking care of them. It was mainly because the version update was coming, and he wanted to take this opportunity to harvest the last wave. He sold some obsolete machines to the players, occasionally selling some high-quality ones, and then accepting strengthening and repair missions. For this, Han Shao went into seclusion to build for a few days. When the number of players in the faction increased, no matter how fast he built, he would definitely not be able to keep up with the demand of the players, unless he could build a production line. However, this was still a long way away. However, Han Shao had a solution to this problem long ago, which was to increase the NC resources of the faction and use his connections to open up opportunities for the players to go to other maps to do missions and earn money. Sunil was one of the player nurturing bases that he had prepared. After selling for a few days, Han Shao took a flying disc carrier and arrived at the 57th floor of a tall building in the center of the hub city. This was the office of an absolutely neutral organization called the Space-Time Research Association. The name sounded grand, but it had nothing to do with space-time. This was an association of scholars to store knowledge and exchange knowledge. They had offices in various star fields, and the structure was loose. The Space-Time Research Association aimed to store the information and history of all civilizations in the universe, such as academic knowledge, historical records of universal civilizations, literature of various races, and so on. It was like a knowledge base, and the platform allowed many members to exchange new research topics. The academic atmosphere was thick. This kind of organization was naturally public, and the leader was the arcane church. This universal civilization had the thickest culture and countless members in various star fields. Even the Radiant Federation and the Red Empire joined the management positions of the association later on. The Space-Time Research Association's inventory contained practical knowledge, such as the technology of different civilizations, magic, supers, and so on. Practical knowledge was more precious, and those that were too sensitive were usually not displayed to the outside world. This was also a requirement of the advanced civilizations. If one wanted to browse such important knowledge, they had to obtain a higher level of clearance. The only way to increase their relationship with the faction was to donate unknown materials and literature, but increasing their clearance was very complicated. There was no clear way, and they could only wait for the management to filter. First, they had to participate in the various exchange meetings organized by the association to provide new insights, increase their presence, and increase their status and reputation among the members. When they had enough faction connections, been in the association for a long time, had a clean background, and had actual social status, such as having very high positive legend points or extremely high faction connections in the advanced civilizations, they would have a chance to have their clearance raised by the management. In short, it was extremely complicated. In Han Zhao's previous life, the players had only started to pay attention to the Space-Time Research Association in the later stages. At that time, they were looking for the highest class knowledge, which was extremely rare. The Research Association had the relevant information, and this was one of the ways to obtain the highest class knowledge. However, in order to obtain it, one had to spend a huge amount of time and effort, and there were no shortcuts. Since he would not have any ideas about it for a long time, it was better to join this association early than late. Thus, Han Xiao decided to join now. There were no requirements to join the association, and all he had to do was pay. Compared to the Research Association, the entrance fee was much more affordable, only 500 anus. Of course, Han Zhao's goal was not so long-term. Joining the Research Association would give him a secondary class, and that was what he wanted. There were no twists and turns in the procedures. He entered the information, filled in the form, paid, and flirted with the receptionist. The whole process took less than 10 minutes. Walking out of the Research Association's office, Han Xiao opened the interface, and there was a new option for his secondary class. Scholar. There was a secondary class called the Attribute class. For example, the current scholar would greatly increase a single attribute every time he leveled up, and there were no free attribute points, only potential points. Scholar would increase his intelligence by 10 points every time he leveled up, and after leveling up 5 times in a row, his intelligence would increase by 50 points. Intelligence was the core attribute of the mechanic class, and it was related to machinery affinity. One of Han Zhao's current talents was machinery analysis, which increased his machinery affinity by 1 point every 10 points of intelligence. Han Xiao basically put all his points into intelligence, and his current intelligence was more than 600 points. This was a core talent, and Han Xiao knew that this was only one of the skills related to the intelligence attribute of the mechanic class. He would receive more class skills in the later stages. Furthermore, the scholar secondary class gave him another talent called research theory, which increased his intelligence by 1 point for every 3 skills he mastered. It was extremely suitable for the mechanic and mage classes, as both classes were famous for having many skills. Furthermore, both classes enjoyed the bonus of intelligence. Compared to the mage class, which still required the mystery attribute, the mechanic class had the highest bonus from the scholar class. A blueprint for the mechanic class was considered a skill, and Han Xiao had already understood more than 100 blueprints. Just the scholar class alone gave him 90 points of intelligence. Of all the secondary classes that were the easiest to obtain, the attribute class was the most useful option for Han Xiao. Every player could easily obtain this type of attribute class, provided that they knew about it, and the bonus was extremely significant. Furthermore, it was a growth attribute talent that could even be used in the later stages of the game. In Han Xiao's previous life, many top-class players would choose to learn one or two attribute class. Among them, the most impressive one was the luck attribute class. Just from a name, one could tell what this class was like. Gambler. He still remembered the effect of the gambler talent. By winning a certain amount of things through gambling, betting, and so on, one's luck would increase. As the amount of things one continued to accumulate, the luck attribute would increase. If one lost a certain amount of things, one's luck would decrease. This perfectly explained the meaning of the name of this subclass and the luck attribute. In fact, Han Xiao really wanted to obtain the gambler subclass. After all, no matter how much his luck decreased, it would only go from 1 to 0. It was completely useless. If he won, he would make a killing. After experiencing the feeling of clarity after leveling up for a while, Han Xiao looked at the interface. The level 100 promotion mission was his main goal. With just one look, Han Xiao suddenly started to doubt his life. Chapter 423. Your total level has reached 100. You can continue to level up after completing the promotion mission. The Trial of the Strong requires you to kill a strong enemy that is 1 grade higher than you. You can complete the mission with a team, but the team members cannot exceed your own grade. Current progress: 0 out of 1 inch, F *CKU. Han Xiao clenches teeth. This promotion mission was not the most difficult, but at his level, the difficulty increased by a few times. Killing a strong enemy beyond his grade, he had drawn a similar promotion mission before. At that time, when he was LV 40, the requirement was to kill 3 targets that were 5 grades higher than him. The difference was very small, but compared to this promotion mission, it was like heaven and earth. I'm grade B now. Doesn't that mean I have to kill a grade a strong enemy that's 1 grade higher? Han Xiao's mouth twitched. If this mission appeared at a lower grade, it would only be a little challenging. It would be like forming a team to kill a boss. However, as he advanced, the difference would become bigger, and the difficulty would increase exponentially. The Trials of the Strong only appeared in the advancement requirements of Grade B to Grade E. After reaching Grade A, this mission would no longer appear. If he was Grade B+, then the difference in strength would not be that great. However, he was only LV 100. In terms of levels, he was only at the beginning of Grade B to mid-grade. Yet, this requirement just happened to appear at this level. He felt as if the goddess of luck had kicked him in the face. This was simply unlucky, and Han Xiao felt extremely uncomfortable. What kind of concept was Grade A? It could cause a destructive disaster on the surface of a planet. Their strength was only below Grade S, and they could do whatever they want in the galaxy. Grade B was the backbone of the galaxy, and Grade A was the high-end strength. The difference in numbers was tens of thousands of times. The difference in strength was too great. Han Xiao sighed. The mission was already set, and there was no point in being frustrated. He had to advance anyway, so he could only think of a way. The difference between Grade A supers is also great. If I want to complete the mission, I can only pick the weakest among them. But no matter how weak they are, they're still much stronger than me. If I fight them head-on, I will definitely lose. I can only use underhanded methods. Luckily, I don't have to fight them one-on-one, and there is no way to complete the mission. Han Xiao rubbed his chin. His brain was spinning rapidly. First of all, I have to determine the target and search for similar opportunities in his memory. Secondly, I have to make a plan to weaken the enemy as much as possible before the battle. I have to take advantage of his weakness and kill him. Otherwise, I will not be able to fight against an A-class powerhouse at his peak. There were no restrictions on the method of killing, which meant that he only needed to kill the target with his own hands. The most ideal plan was naturally to kill a prisoner who was unable to resist. It might be possible at a lower level, but at this level, there was no chance at all. Even if some forces held at-level prisoners, it was impossible to kill them casually, let alone let others do it. Therefore, the only way to complete the mission was to fight. This was like hunting. The hunter had his eyes on a powerful prey and was hiding in the dark. He needed incomparable patience to make the prey fall into his trap. However, it was impossible to complete the advancement quest in a short period of time. Han Xiao was glad that he did not go for the advancement quest first. Otherwise, he would have suffered a huge loss. There are many targets, but none of them are to be trifled with. We still need a plan for the long term, Han Xiao thought to himself. When he returned to the stronghold, most of the players were not there. The first season had ended, and there were many subsequent events. The time these professional players spent online was significantly reduced. Only Pork Bun, Maple Moon, and a few other players maintained their online time. However, they were not in the stronghold at this time. Instead, they were running daily quests outside. Han Xiao knocked on the other people's rooms. Haluz, Erosia, and the others had all gone out. He was the only one at home. The huge stronghold hall seemed cold and empty. Looking at the time, it was dinner time. He took a bottle of bright silver alcohol from the cabinet, opened the convenient food box, and presented a box of fast food wrapped in foil a minute later. Inside were some lean meat and beans drizzled with black sauce. Han Xiao placed the fast food and drink on the table in the middle of the hall. He sat down on the sofa, took out a spoon, and ate slowly. These simple things were his dinner. After eating for a while, the gate of the stronghold opened, and the officers came back together. Haluz walked in front with a toothpick in his mouth, chatting and laughing with the three Volga brothers. Sylvia carried bags of various sizes and clung to the expressionless Erosia, talking nonstop. Erosia's replies were never more than 5 words, but Sylvia was never tired of chatting. She had walked out of her depression faster than expected. It was no wonder, as at least her father was still alive. Only things that were lost would make people worried. She understood her father's intentions. He wanted her to live a new life, so naturally, she did not want to be depressed all the time. Erosia also changed into new clothes, a long dress. With Han Xiao's understanding of her, it was most likely bought for her by Sylvia. When Han Xiao went to work, the officers went shopping together and had a meal together. Otherwise, Erosia would rather stay at home. As soon as they entered, they saw Han Xiao sitting on the sofa, eating a box of fast food. Han Xiao looked up and glanced at them. "You're back." Everyone hurriedly restrained their smiles and nodded solemnly. "Old Merlin, go and check the mission reports of the Senil team. 3 brothers, remember to enchant the batch of machinery that I gave you last time. Erosia, don't transform in the stronghold for the next 2 days. It's not easy to clean it up." Han Xiao put down his spoon, stood up, and walked to the machinery modification room. "Sylvia, follow me." Sylvia's face tightened, and she quickly followed Han Xiao into the machinery modification room and closed the door. Kicking away the abandoned parts on the floor, Han Xiao found a box, sat down, and sized Sylvia up without saying a word. Sylvia felt uncomfortable under his gaze and carefully asked, "Why are you looking for me?" Han Xiao knocked on the table and said in a deep voice, "I want you for 10 years. You're now my subordinate, not here for a vacation. What do you think you can do for me?" "I'm not sure." Sylvia lowered her head. She did not understand why Han Xiao wanted her to work for 10 years. She was just a child and could not help at all. "You're useless now. In the future, I'll teach you the knowledge of mechanics. You'll only be useful to me when you become stronger. If you refuse to learn and don't want to work for me, don't think I'll allow you to stay in my mercenary group. I don't need trash." Han Xiao did not hold back. "You want to teach me the knowledge of supers?" Sylvia was stunned and stuttered. "I thought you just wanted a maid." Han Xiao frowned. "What do I need a maid for? Are you better than a cleaning robot?" Sylvia's eyes wandered, and she said without confidence, I've never thought about it. Supers, can I really do it? What I mean is, do I have that kind of talent? My eyes can see the blurry future, and in you, I see potential." Han Xiao said calmly. "Langley never let you step into the realm of supers. What a foolish thing to do. When you were born, the super gene has been hidden in your body, waiting to be awakened. Your bastard father buried you for many years. Don't call him a bastard. Sylvia was unhappy. That's my father. I haven't lost my memory. Han Xiao raised his brows. He has 17 major charges, including, but not limited to treason. All right, he's indeed a bastard. Sylvia bit her lips. But you're not allowed to say it. Only I can say it. Stop talking nonsense and get down to business. I'll let you awaken your magnetic energy and teach you the knowledge of supers. Sylvia could not help but stand up straight. She felt that she was about to step into a new level. She was both excited and nervous. Then what should I do? Han Xiao took out 4 thick books and stacked them together. They were about 40 centimeters thick. These 4 books were all basic machinery theories written by different people. The interface did not allow him to accumulate knowledge like this, but it was not as convenient for others. In order to become a mechanic, one had to go through many years of learning. Even if Sylvia was very talented, this step was still necessary. Memorize all 4 books first. Looking at the thick books, Sylvia's mouth opened wide. This was far from what she had imagined. This is too much. Ignoring her opinion, Han Xiao continued. I'll only give you 10 days. After 10 days, I'll test you. If you don't pass, you'll have to memorize 1 more book until you pass. Sylvia's face turned bitter. Memorizing so many books in 10 days was not something she could do even if she died of exhaustion. Furthermore, she had never come into contact with the relevant knowledge before. How was she going to understand the contents of the books? Ask me if there's anything you don't understand. After you pass the test, I'll teach you how to awaken mechanical force. Han Xiao waved his hand, and Sylvia had no choice but to walk out with the books in her hands. She quickly memorized the books with a depressed expression. Although Han Xiao himself did not need to learn like this, the knowledge existed in his mind. It was not that Han Xiao had not studied it before. Teaching other people mechanic knowledge was not a problem at all. I wonder how long it will take for her to grow to the point where she can be of help. Han Xiao shook his head. This was the case with long-term investments. It would take a long time for him to earn back his capital. Thankfully, he did not lack patience. The aftertaste of the Pro League had yet to disappear, and the players were still immersed in the aftertaste. A few days later, the official version update announcement suddenly appeared on the forums and was instantly pinned at the top. Once again, the players were pleasantly surprised. It was translated into various languages and targeted at players from all regions. In less than a minute, the number of replies quickly exceeded 10,000, and it was still increasing crazily. The content of the announcement was that in 12 days of game time, the version 10 update would officially be activated. At that time, all accounts would not be able to log in, and it was recommended that players go offline early to prevent unnecessary losses. As for the content of the update, it did not mention a single thing. The players could not help but feel that it was mysterious. The unknown new version increased the players' anticipation. The main storyline of the various novice planets had all been completed, and the famous people of the different planets had also shown their charm. They each had their own fans. After completing the main storyline, the players were still in the free exploration period. Even the side missions had many extended storylines, and the sense of realism was very strong. Compared to killing monsters and clearing the level, this was more like a journey that made people forget to return. Therefore, many players were eager to know what new storylines would happen on their planets in the new version. They were concerned about the fate of these characters and looked forward to the full view of the vast universe. The unknown content of the version caused the players of the various planets to speculate. Many people guessed what would happen in the future through the storyline and the relationships between the characters in version 10. The reference materials were the chronicles of the various planets. After the completion of the version 10 main storyline in the various regions, there were finally players who excitedly posted their own chronicles. This method attracted the attention of countless players, and they all posted the chronicles of their own planets. All the players contributed together, posting the missions, stories, characters, and so on that they had encountered. Everything that happened on the planet during this period was recorded by the players, be it the main storyline or the side missions. Even a unique NC was recorded by the players. Everyone participated in the same thing, and this feeling made the players happy and never tired. It was as if they were in the tide of the era, working together to achieve a great cause. This sense of belonging was extremely strong. This was the first batch of hardcore players in Galaxy. In Han Zhao's previous life, even if some players did not play Galaxy due to busy or other reasons, they would still come online occasionally to see how the storyline had developed. As there were too many new things, the sense of immersion was unparalleled. It was both a game and a drama series. Chapter 424. Hello, players. This is Galaxy Times, dedicated to sharing first-hand game information and escorting your gaming career. The male and female hosts read out the familiar opening lines. As soon as the program was released, thousands of old viewers flooded in, and as usual, there was a wave of bullet screen comments to urge the update. He's built a base, he's going to explode. Sure enough, it's going to be a version update. I'm looking forward to it. My big times is awesome. Flood the bullet screen and cover the cold jokes. The bullet screen was filled with comments. The awkward cold jokes at the beginning of the program quickly passed, and they entered the main topic. The male host said, "In a few days, the version 10 update will arrive, and Galaxy will enter the next version storyline. Regarding this, we have obtained first-hand information and some unconfirmed rumors. In this episode, we will filter the information for the majority of players and make guesses and analysis for the next version. Then, before we start the analysis, we will first do a comprehensive analysis of the storyline of the various planets in the current version. A large part of our source of information comes from the chronicles of events compiled by the players for the various planets. Here, we thank all the enthusiastic players. This information has greatly facilitated our work. The players were praised by name, and they were very happy. Then, the two hosts summarized the storyline of each novice planet. At this time, the main storyline of each planet had already ended, and they could go through it from beginning to end. The Times also introduced and commented on the important characters in each storyline. Of course, the commentary was not boring, but was accompanied by screenshots and video data. Every time they talked about the story of a planet, the players of that planet would be the most active. The version 10 main storyline of these planets was also very varied. Planet Winterfrost's Lord Zingleth's Incident, Planet Polyden's Arcane Tide, Planet Longsong's Dynasty Division, Planet Summer's Shadow Corporation Incident, Su'in's Chaotic Expedition, and so on. These were the core main storyline, and there were secondary storylines. Just like Blue Star's main storyline was the Six Nations and the Germinal Organization, and the secondary storyline was Bennett's Sanctuary Project. The background of each planet was different, and the feeling that the main storyline gave to the players was also very different. There were modern, sci-fi, magical, mysterious, and indescribable styles. These planets were located all over the place. Most of the players had not entered the galaxy, so they did not know the location of their planet in the universe. However, Han Xiao did. The novice planets were evenly distributed in the various star fields, and planet Aquamarine was the only novice planet in the Shattered Star Ring. Among all the main storylines, Blue Star ended the earliest and received the most attention. There would definitely be a main character in the storyline that was closely related to the events. The two hosts read the script, and finally, it was Blue Star's turn. Speaking of Blue Star's main storyline, we have to mention a character that is absolutely unavoidable. After the Blue Star storyline ended, he was still active in the eyes of the public. He was the first character to lead the players into the galaxy. I believe that the majority of players will not be unfamiliar with his name. The comments went wild. Perhaps they did not know the storyline of the other planets, but almost everyone knew Han Zhao's name. These viewers immediately had a common topic. Black Star is out. Is this the video of Han, Black Phantom, Germinal Organization Destroyer, Sanctuary Master, Interstellar Explorer, Prophet, Black Star Mercenary Leader, Materialist, Box Trader, Poor Ass Xiao? Black Star, You bunch of B** started talking about me behind my back again. Team 30 seconds, true men request to battle. Our slogan is in the world of martial arts. Only speed is invincible. I want the Dragon Emperor. I want Eroshia. I want to lick them to death. Get lost, screen-licking monster. This time, it was the Blue Star players' turn to be active. The density of the comments increased to a whole new level. Spamming was a very promising skill, and the Chinese players had always maxed it out. The male host held the script and briefly introduced Han Zhao's life story to the players. Han Zhao, original name Xiao Han, member of the Overmara family. He almost died in an accident and was captured by the German organization. He was made into a test subject, but the brainwashing failed. He disguised himself for a long time and finally found a flaw. He escaped from the German organization's control and began his journey to fight against the German organization. He once joined Star Dragon, but he left and became a freelance assassin in the darknet. His codename was Black Phantom. The German organization chased after him for many years, but they only saw his shadow. He awakened some kind of precognitive ability and was able to sense danger in advance. After a period of hibernation, he began his full-scale revenge. He single-handedly directed the Six Nations expedition against the German organization. During this battle, he infiltrated the German organization's headquarters and stole all the confidential information, establishing the victory for the Six Nations. He became a hero of Blue Star. However, his journey did not end there. One day, he predicted that a disaster was about to befall the Blue Star. So, he used some means to summon a space battleship and led the carefully selected warriors into the galaxy to find a solution. Most of the above information came from the Chronicles and was obtained by the players. The players had collected a lot of information during the exploration period, and Han Zhao's story was already public information. In the history of Blue Star, Han Zhao was like the mastermind behind the scenes. Many events were related to him in countless ways. In the Chronicles, Han Zhao's name was mentioned countless times. This also allowed the new players to learn about the events that had happened in the past through the information, which continuously increased Han Zhao's reputation. The Chronicles of version 10 were already as vast as the sea, and Han Zhao was still a bright star, a hero in version 10. After talking about the story of Blue Star, the summary of the story of version 10 came to an end. The two hosts entered the next segment, which was the theme of this episode, to analyze the new version. According to the information we have made a few guesses. First, in the new version, the players will definitely be connected to the galaxy, leaving their original planet and starting to travel the universe. Second, other than the current 13 beginner planets, the new version will also add new birth planets. Based on this point, the new birth planets should be planets that can directly enter the galaxy. Here, we are boldly guessing the difference between the new planets and the old planets. The old planets have to go through a new storyline to enter the galaxy, but the new planets can directly enter the galaxy. The price is that the players on the new planets have to start from scratch with a new account, while the players on the old planets have to inherit their previous high-level accounts. So whether it is new or old, they have their own advantages. Third, although the storyline of the new versions of different planets is unknown, the ones that lead to the storyline are definitely the characters, and there are definitely clues hidden in the characters. We suggest that we use the characters as a starting point to guess who will lead the next version storyline, and what role will the main character of version 10 play in the new version. The clues for most of the planets are limited, but there is one exception: Blue Star. Before Black Star left, he left behind a frozen mission, the last stronghold. The mission description is as follows. One day in the future, a catastrophe will engulf Blue Star, and Sanctuary 3 will be the last safe stronghold. Only by protecting the weak light in the darkness can there be hope to survive this crisis. The mission requirement is to protect Sanctuary 3, and the destruction rate cannot exceed 50%. We have reason to believe that this mission foreshadows the events of Blue Star version 20, an unknown catastrophe that will affect the entire planet, and Black Star will definitely play a role in this catastrophe. Han Xiao left behind the frozen mission in order to give the players a direction to imagine and use this to increase his fame. Before the version changed, there would be a wave of guessing about the new version, and the report from the Times was within his expectations. Blue Star, Sanctuary 3. Towering steel walls, tight defense turrets. The Sanctuary was now fully formed, like a giant fortress in the wasteland. Han Xiao had left for more than a year, and the current manager of the Sanctuary was Huang Yu. He had built the Sanctuary according to the established strategy, and everything was in order. He had already taken in more than 3 million refugees. Other than these people who were being protected, there were also hundreds of thousands of migrants who were the Inhumans. Countless players treated Sanctuary 3 as their main city, not only because there were enough daily missions and rewards, but also because Han Zhao's series of decisions had cultivated the players' habits. After the habits were cultivated, the players liked to gather there to set up stalls, trade, team up, and so on. The residents had conflicting feelings toward the Inhumans. On one hand, the Inhumans liked to help them, but most people were jealous of the existence of the Inhumans and saw them as aliens. There had always been a sense of estrangement. The square where the players gathered was as dangerous as a special race's gathering place in the eyes of some residents, and they did not dare to go there normally. The Inhumans had helped Bennett build many sanctuaries, but after they were built, most of the Inhumans would return to Sanctuary 3. Huang Yu did not understand why the Inhumans gathered, so he could only attribute the reason to his former boss. He felt that only Black Phantom would know the reason. However, in the past few days, a large number of Inhumans had arrived from all over the world and flooded into the Sanctuary without any warning. This phenomenon had attracted Huang Yu's attention. "Have you found out the reason?" In the meeting room of the Sanctuary, Huang Yu asked his subordinates. After he took charge of the Sanctuary, he had built his own team. Everyone in the room was a member of the Darknet, and they were all under Bennett. No, the intelligence networks from all over the world have not found the reason for the large-scale migration of the Inhumans. Currently, the number of Inhumans in Sanctuary 3 has exceeded 800,000, and it's still increasing. This is not a good sign. Although most of the Inhumans know their place, there's no lack of saboteurs. We have been attacked a few times in the past year. If these Inhumans have other motives, the destruction that 800,000 supers can cause is devastating. If we don't handle this well, Sanctuary 3, which has been built for 2 years, might be destroyed overnight. Huang Yu was worried. Of course, he did not know that the reason the players gathered in Sanctuary 3 was because of the time speculation about the mission left by Han Xiao. Sanctuary 3 was very likely to be a key location in the main storyline, and there was a high chance that it was a safe location. Therefore, before the update, most of the players decided to come to Sanctuary 3. This way, not only could they enter the main storyline immediately when the new version arrived, but it was also safer than other places. "We have to guard against this hidden danger. We have to take measures," Huang Yu said. But the instructions left by His Excellency Black Phantom was to not use any hostile tactics against the Inhumans, and not to control their freedom, except for those who cause trouble. What we're doing is going against his instructions. Huang Yu shook his head. "I know, but we can't let our guard down against the Inhumans because of this. Black Phantom has been gone for more than a year. If he was here, I wouldn't have to worry about anything at all. However, he's not here, so we have to be flexible." "Then what do you plan to do?" Huang Yu said in a deep voice. "Divide, prohibit a portion of the Inhumans from entering the main city of Sanctuary 3, and chase them to the 2 nearby satellite cities, either Overmera or Black Pine. This way, even if there is chaos, it won't happen in the hinterland." Everyone looked at each other. "That's what we'll do. Report to the 2 satellite cities managers and ask them to secretly mobilize the army to prevent any accidents. 3 days later, we'll officially start the Inhumans division." Huang Yu's tone was firm as he confirmed the decision. Suddenly, a wave of sleepiness hit him, and he could not help but yawn. Dark Star, in a hidden mothership base. In a dark conference room, the screen of the video conference room was lit up with a cold light. These people were the upper echelons of Dark Star, and every screen was a blurry figure. Their faces were hidden, and they were extremely mysterious. Even Ghidorah, who had been enemies with Darkstar for many years, only knew a small portion of the upper echelons. Darkstar was like a cloud of fog that could not be seen clearly, and it was always hidden in the darkness. The centermost screen was the leader of Darkstar. It was blurry, and his voice was also mechanically synthesized. What stage has a mutation source that we sent and reached? Based on the time, it is already past the larval stage, and all mutation sources will enter the larval stage within 2 months. The effect have already been concealed, and it is estimated that the mutation source will enter the outbreak stage in about a year. However, we are unable to pinpoint the exact time. After all, we are unable to control the thoughts of the mutation source. The leader of Darkstar said, "Continue to observe. Ghidorah has intercepted a mutation source, and we do not know the extent of their research. The plan needs to be changed, and we cannot wait for the mutation source to mature naturally. After the symptoms erupt, we have to take some action, and we will discuss the details later. Anner, how is Ashes?" The last sentence was directed at Anner, who was one of Darkstar's grade A supers and Ashes' teacher. A voice sounded from the screen representing Anner. "I told him to focus on training his Esper ability, and his progress is not bad. His strength has clearly increased, and given some time, his chances of entering the Calamity grade will be over 20%. Rogo died in battle, and Vimera is locked up in the Rainbow Prison. We urgently need to replenish our high-level combatants, and Ashes is currently the most promising candidate to reach grade A supers. His Esper ability is extremely strong, so tell him that I have high hopes for him. Then, let's end the meeting." Chapter 425. Hello, players. This is Galaxy Times, dedicated to sharing first-hand game information and escorting your gaming career. The male and female hosts read out the familiar opening lines. As soon as the program was released, thousands of old viewers flooded in, and as usual, there was a wave of bullet comments to urge the update. "He's built a base, he's going to explode. Sure enough, it's going to be a version update. I'm looking forward to it. My big times is awesome." Fill up the bullet comments and cover the cold jokes. The bullet comments were densely packed. As usual, the awkward and cold jokes at the beginning of the program passed quickly, and they got to the main topic. The male host. In a few days, version 0 update will arrive, and Galaxy will enter the next version of the storyline. Regarding this, we have obtained first-hand information as well as some unconfirmed rumors. In this episode, we will filter the information for the majority of players and make guesses and analysis for the next version. Then, before we start the analysis, we will first do a comprehensive analysis of the storyline of each planet in the current version. A large part of our source of information comes from the chronicles of events compiled by players for different planets. Here, we thank all the enthusiastic players. This information has provided great convenience for our work. The players were praised by name, and they were very happy. Then, the two hosts summarized the storyline of each novice planet. At this time, the main storyline of each planet had already ended, and they could go through it from beginning to end. The Times also introduced and evaluated the important characters in each storyline. Of course, the commentary was not boring, but was accompanied by screenshots and video data. Every time the story of a planet was mentioned, the players of that planet would be the most active in the bullet comments. The main storyline of these planets was also varied. Planet Winterfrost's Lord Zingleth's Incident, Planet Polyden's Arcane Tide, Planet Longsong's Dynasty Split, Planet Summer's Shadow Corporation Incident, Suin's Chaotic Outer Realm Expedition, and so on. These were the core, main storyline, and there were secondary storylines. Just like Blue Star's main storyline was the Six Nations and the Germinal Organization, and the secondary storyline was Bennett's Sanctuary Project. The background of each planet was different, and the feeling that the main storyline gave to the players was also very different. There were modern, sci-fi, magical, mysterious, and indescribable styles. These planets were located all over the place. Most of the players had not entered the galaxy, so they did not know the location of their planet in the universe. However, Han Xiao did. The novice planets were evenly distributed in the various star fields, and planet Aquamarine was the only novice planet in the Shattered Star Ring. Among all the main storylines, Blue Star ended the earliest and received the most attention. There would definitely be a main character in the storyline that was closely related to the events. The two hosts read the script, and finally, it was Blue Star's turn. Speaking of Blue Star's main storyline, we have to mention a character that cannot be avoided. After the Blue Star storyline ended, he was still active in the eyes of the public. He was the first character to lead the players into the galaxy. I believe that the majority of players will not be unfamiliar with his name. The bullet comments went wild. Perhaps they did not know the storyline of the other planets, but almost everyone knew Han Zhao's name. These viewers immediately had a common topic. Black Star is out. Is this the video of Han Black Phantom, Germinal Organization Destroyer, Sanctuary Master, Interstellar Explorer, Prophet, Black Star Mercenary Leader, Materialist, Open Box Trader, Poor-Ass Xiao? Black Star, you bastard are talking about me behind my back again. 30-second True Men Team requests to battle. Our slogan is, in the world of martial arts, only speed is unbeatable. I want the Dragon Emperor. I want Eroshia. I want to lick them to death. Get lost, screen-licking monster. This time, it was the Blue Star players' turn to be active. The intensity of the bullet comments had reached a whole new level. Spamming was a skill with a bright future, and the Chinese players had always maxed it out. The male host held the script and briefly introduced Han Zhao's life story to the players. Han Xiao, original name Xiao Han, member of the Overmera family. He almost died in an accident and was captured by the Germinal Organization. He was made into a test subject, but the brainwashing failed. He disguised himself for a long time and finally found a flaw. He escaped from the Germinal Organization's control and began his journey to fight against the Germinal Organization. He once joined Star Dragon, but he left and became a freelance assassin in the Darknet. His codename was Black Phantom. The Germinal Organization chased after him for many years, but they only saw his shadow. He awakened some kind of precognitive ability that allowed him to sense danger in advance. After a period of hibernation, he began his full-scale revenge. He single-handedly directed the Six Nations expedition against the Germinal Organization and snuck into the Germinal Organization's headquarters during this battle. He stole all the confidential information and established the victory for the Six Nations. He became the hero of Blue Star. However, his journey did not end there. One day, he predicted that a disaster would befall the Blue Star, so he used some means to summon a space battleship and led the carefully selected warriors into the galaxy to find a solution. Most of the above information came from the Chronicles and was provided by the players. The players collected a lot of information during the exploration period, and Han Zhao's story was public information. In the history of Blue Star, Han Xiao was like the mastermind behind the scenes. Many of the events were related to him in countless ways. In the Chronicles, Han Zhao's name was mentioned countless times. This allowed the new players to learn about the story events that had happened in the past through the information, and they kept increasing Han Zhao's reputation. The Chronicles of version 0 were as vast as the sea, and Han Xiao was still a bright star, a hero in version 0. After talking about the Blue Star story, the version 0 storyline came to an end. The two hosts entered the next segment, which was the theme of this episode, to analyze the new version. According to the information we have made a few guesses. First, in the new version, the players will definitely be connected to the galaxy, leaving their original planet and starting to travel the universe. Second, other than the current 13 beginner planets, the new version will add new birth planets. Based on this point, the new birth planets should be planets that can directly enter the galaxy. Here, we are boldly guessing the difference between the new planets and the old planets. The old planets have to go through a new storyline to enter the galaxy, but the new planets can directly enter the galaxy. The price is that the players on the new planets have to start from scratch with a new account, while the players on the old planets have to inherit their previous high-level accounts. Therefore, whether it is new or old, they have their own advantages. Third, although the storyline of the new version is unknown for the different planets, it is definitely the characters that lead to the storyline. There must be clues hidden in the characters. We suggest that we use the characters as a starting point to guess who will lead the next version's storyline, and what role will the main character of version 0 play in the new version. The clues for most of the planets are limited, but there is only one exception: Blue Star. Before Black Star left, he left behind a frozen mission, the last position. The mission description is as follows: one day in the future, a catastrophe will engulf Blue Star, and Sanctuary 3 will be the last safe position. Protect the weak light in the darkness, and only then will there be hope to survive the crisis. The mission requirement is to protect Sanctuary 3, and the destruction rate cannot exceed 50%. We have reason to believe that this mission foreshadows the events of Blue Star version 2. 0, an unknown catastrophe that will affect the entire planet, and Black Star will definitely play a role in the catastrophe. Han Xiao had left behind a frozen mission to give the players a direction to think about and use it to increase his fame. Before the version change, there would be a wave of guessing about the new version, and the Times report was within his expectations. Blue Star, Sanctuary 3. Tall steel walls, tight defense turrets. The sanctuary was now fully formed, like a giant fortress on the wasteland. Han Xiao had left for more than a year, and the current manager of the sanctuary was Huang Yu. He had built the sanctuary according to the established strategy, and everything was in order. He had already taken in more than 3 million refugees, and other than these refugees, there were also hundreds of thousands of migrants, inhumans. Countless players treated Sanctuary 3 as their main city, not only because there were enough daily missions and rewards, but also because the series of decisions made by Han Xiao during his time there had cultivated the players' habits. After the habits were cultivated, the players liked to gather there, set up stalls, trade, and form teams. The residents had very conflicting feelings toward the Inhumans. On one hand, the Inhumans liked to help them, but most people were jealous of the existence of the Inhumans and saw them as aliens. There had always been a sense of estrangement. The square where the players gathered was as dangerous as a special race's gathering place in the eyes of some residents, and they did not dare to go there normally. The Inhumans had helped Bennett build many sanctuaries, but after they were built, most of the Inhumans would return to Sanctuary 3. Huang Yu did not understand why the Inhumans gathered, so he could only attribute the reason to his former boss. He felt that only Black Phantom would know the reason. However, in the past few days, a large number of Inhumans had arrived from all over the world and flooded into the sanctuary without any warning. This phenomenon had caught Huang Yu's attention. "Have you found out the reason?" In the meeting room of the sanctuary, Huang Yu asked his subordinates. After he took charge of the sanctuary, he had built his own team. Everyone in the room was a member of the Darknet, and they all belonged to Bennett. "No, after gathering intelligence from all over the world, we still haven't found out the reason for the large-scale migration of the Inhumans. Currently, the number of Inhumans in Sanctuary 3 has exceeded 800,000, and it is still increasing. This is not a good sign. Although most of the Inhumans know their place, there is no lack of saboteurs. We have been attacked a few times in the past year. If these Inhumans have other motives, the destruction that 800,000 supers can cause is devastating. If we don't handle it well, Sanctuary 3, which has been built for 2 years, might be destroyed overnight." Huang Yu was worried. Of course, he did not know that the reason the players gathered in Sanctuary 3 was because the New York Times had speculated about the mission that Han Xiao had left behind. Sanctuary 3 was very likely to be a key location in the main storyline, and there was a high chance that it was a safe location. Therefore, before the update, most of the players had decided to come to Sanctuary 3. This way, not only would they be able to enter the main storyline as soon as the new version arrived, but it would also be safer than other places. We have to take precautions against this hidden danger. We have to take measures. Huang Yu said. But the instructions that His Excellency Black Phantom left behind was to not use any hostile tactics against the Inhumans and to not try to control their freedom, except for those who cause trouble. What we're doing is going against his instructions. Huang Yu shook his head. I know, but we can't let our guard down against the Inhumans because of this. Black Phantom has been gone for more than a year. If he was here, I wouldn't have to worry about anything. However, he is not here, so we have to be flexible. Then what do you plan to do? Huang Yu said with a deep voice. Divide them. Forbid some of the Inhumans from entering the main city of Sanctuary 3. Chase them to the 2 nearby cities, Overmera or Black Pine. This way, even if there is a riot, it will not happen in the hinterland. Everyone looked at each other. That's what we will do. Inform the managers of the 2 cities and secretly mobilize the army to prevent any accidents. 3 days later, we will officially start dividing the Inhumans. Huang Yu's tone was firm as he confirmed the decision. Suddenly, a wave of sleepiness hit him, and he could not help but yawn. Dark Star, in a hidden mothership base. In a dark conference room, the video conference screen was lit up with a cold light. These people were the upper echelons of Dark Star, and every screen was a blurry figure. Their faces were not shown, and they were extremely mysterious. Even Ghidorah, who had been enemies with Dark Star for many years, only knew a few of the upper echelons. Dark Star was like a cloud of fog that could not be seen clearly, and it was always hidden in the darkness. In the middle of the screen was the leader of Dark Star. It was blurry, and his voice was also mechanically synthesized. What stage has the mutation source grown to? According to the time, it has already passed the larval stage, and all mutation sources will enter the larval stage within 2 months. The effects have already been concealed, and it is estimated that the mutation source will enter the outbreak stage in about a year. However, the exact timing is not possible. After all, we are unable to control the thoughts of the mutation source. The leader of Dark Star said, "Continue to observe. Ghidorah has intercepted a mutation source, and we do not know the extent of their research. The plan needs to be changed, and we cannot wait for the mutation source to grow naturally. After the symptoms break out, we have to take some action, and we will discuss the details later. Anner, how is Ashes?" The last sentence was directed at Anner, one of Dark Star's grade A supers and Ashes' teacher. A voice sounded from the screen representing Anner. I told him to focus on training his Esper ability, and his progress is not bad. His strength has clearly increased, and given some time, the chances of him entering the Calamity grade is more than 20%. Rogo died in battle, and Vimera is locked up in the Rainbow Prison. We urgently need to replenish our high-level combatants, and Ashes is currently the most promising candidate to reach grade A supers. His Esper ability is very strong, so tell him that I have high hopes for him. Then, let's end the meeting. Chapter 426. This celebrity had a large number of fans in the few star clusters in the Shattered Star Ring. He was a singer, and due to the power of the media, his influence was not limited by physical distance. This performance was to celebrate the New Phylon Alliance's traditional festival of reunification. This was a tradition every year, and this singer was the most popular one among the invited members. The venue of the performance was a holiday spaceship called Wine and Celebration. Those who could watch the performance were all nobles and wealthy merchants of the New Phylon Alliance. If he wanted to get in touch with the target, he would have to go to the venue. Then, the problem was, how would he get the tickets? You want to go to the Unification Day celebration? After knowing the destination of the spaceship, Sylvia rolled her eyes and said, "Stop dreaming. The people who can watch the performance every year are all big shots of New Phylon, political leaders, military leaders, senior officials, and merchants who contribute astronomical amounts of tax every year. With so many big shots gathered together, the security is extremely tight. Don't even think about sneaking in. You might be mistaken for an assassination attempt." Han Xiao glanced at her and said, "Have you finished memorizing the book I gave you last time?" Hearing that, Sylvia's aura instantly weakened. She mumbled, "Isn't there still one more day before the test? By the way, you're a citizen of Newfoundland. Don't you want to go and take a look? Who doesn't want to go to the celebration? But ordinary people like us can only watch it on TV." Sylvia curled her lips, and there was a hint of yearning in her tone. Unification Day was to commemorate the day when the various countries of the Newfoundland Alliance were reunited after the division. It had a huge meaning to the people of Newfoundland. It was similar to National Day in Han Zhao's previous life. Sylvia wanted to go every year. Originally, with Langley's official position, he had the right to bring her into the venue. However, Langley was a traitor and a spy. Now that she had become a mercenary, she no longer had the chance to enter the celebration, so she could only bury this little dream. Mercenaries were powerful, but their social status was not high. After all, most galactic residents lived a peaceful life. Only when they encountered trouble that needed to be solved by force would they think of experts to deal with such matters. Naturally, they were not willing to deal with dangerous mercenaries. Furthermore, most of the mercenaries were free galactic people with no nationality. Although Han Xiao had worked with the Newfoundland Alliance before, the most he could do was request to see the prisoner. He was not qualified to participate in the celebration. Of course, nothing was absolute. With Floating Dragon's background, if Han Xiao could pull Ames over, he did not believe that the Newfoundland Alliance would dare not invite the Dragon Emperor in. Not only that, she would definitely be given a first-class VIP seat, on the same level as the leader of the Alliance. What? You don't want to give face to the Dragon Emperor? Have you ever seen a brick the size of a planet? Therefore, it was really comfortable to have strength. When one's strength reached a certain level, there was no need to make a move. It was enough to show off. Han Xiao touched his chin and muttered, "Since you want to go to the scene, I'll take you with me. It's just a matter of convenience." Sylvia was stunned and asked suspiciously, "Do you really have the tickets?" "Impossible. I don't need a ticket." Han Xiao waved his hand. "Someone will invite me in." "I don't believe you." Sylvia obviously did not have much confidence. She paused and said, "Plus, I still have to memorize books." All right, I'll give you a day off." Han Xiao laughed and shook his head. "There was a path to heaven, but you refused to take it." Haluz came over and said expressionlessly, "Let me guess, do I have to stay and watch the ship?" "Wow, my brother, we're really getting more and more in sync." Han Xiao clapped exaggeratedly, and Haluz had a helpless expression. Wine and celebration was parked at the dock of the main planet of Newfoundland. This was a huge spaceship that was relatively flat in the shape of a hexagon. Countless frigates surrounded it. For the Unification Day celebration, this dock was closed for the day and used to welcome all the guests. In the main hall of the dock, a huge crowd was gathered there. These were all Newfoundland citizens who had come to watch the boarding ceremony. All the performers and political leaders would board the ship through a passage in the dock. This was a ceremony that signaled the start of the Unification Day celebration. It was also the only chance for normal citizens to get close to the scene, so there were many people, and it was extremely crowded. At this time, Han Xiao was in the crowd. The crowd moved around him, but he did not move. Sylvia grabbed onto his clothes tightly to prevent herself from being pushed away. At the edge of the crowd were rows of soldiers to maintain order, preventing anyone from rushing to the boarding road. The soldiers on this road frequently looked at Han Xiao with warning and caution in their eyes. Clearly, they could see that Han Xiao was a super who posed an extremely high threat. "Black Star, I want to ask you one last time." Sylvia's voice trembled, and she kept swallowing her saliva. "We're really not going to cause a commotion and rush to the spaceship, right? Although I've given you the next 10 years, don't let me die so quickly." Han Xiao was too lazy to answer and waited silently. After a while, the crowd in the distance started to riot. The important figures finally started to board the ship under the accompaniment of the guards. The crowd let out deafening cheers. These important figures had kind smiles on their faces and waved to the crowd as they walked. Han Xiao had a feeling that they would say, "Thank you for your hard work, comrades." They're starting to board the ship. Wow, that's the Alliance's chairman. I used to see him on TV a lot. Sylvia did not have time to scold him. She quickly stretched her neck and let out a series of exclamations. She did not believe that Han Xiao would be able to enter the scene from the very beginning. Now that they had started to board the ship, and Han Xiao was still there, it meant that he was not one of the people boarding the ship. However, Sylvia did not expose him. She was already very satisfied to be able to watch the boarding ceremony. In the past, her father did not allow her to come, so this was the first time she had seen the Unification Day celebration spaceship up close. Even if she could not board, she was still quite happy. Although Langley was a rebel, he taught his daughter, Sylvia, to love her country very much. One by one, the people walked over. Suddenly, an even louder voice came from afar, surging like waves. Han Xiao looked up and saw a group of assistants escorting a humanoid creature with a light veil walking over slowly. The masked person revealed a pair of eyes with black eyeshadow, exuding a flirtatious aura. Even the solemn blue robe could not hide the charm he exuded. Chunxing, Chunxing. The cheers were like a tsunami. Han Xiao nodded silently. This was the person who had triggered the mission, the singer whose stage name was Chunxing. Hearing the ear-shattering cheers, one could tell how successful this person's career was. By the way, this person was a male. When passing by the section of the road where Han Xiao was, Chunxing suddenly stopped and slowly turned his head. His gaze pierced through the crowd and accurately locked on a Han Xiao. The next moment, he walked over directly. The crowd immediately boiled over, wanting to rush up and touch their idol. The soldiers held back the crowd tightly, almost causing a stampede. They gritted their teeth and said, "Your Excellency Chunxing, please don't come near. It's not safe here. It's okay. No one will hurt me." Chunxing spoke. His voice was gentle, extremely pleasant, and as pure as water. Those who heard it all felt their hearts calm down. The commotion in the crowd magically stopped, and he walked into the crowd. The crowd spontaneously opened up a path. Finally, Chunxing stopped in front of Han Xiao. Under the gazes of everyone, he smiled lightly and said, "Hello, I hope to have the honor of inviting you to personally watch my performance." The chapter count made me a little flustered, so I wrote an extra chapter. There's more to come. NT. Chapter 427. Hiss. The sound of people sucking in a breath of air could be heard, and the surrounding crowd looked over in disbelief, envy, and jealousy. The people around Han Xiao hurriedly backed away, making him stand out. Who is this guy? What's his relationship with Chunxing? Why did they pick him? What a lucky guy. Damn it, why can't it be me? Han Zhao's expression did not change, and he nodded. Sure, please follow me. Chunxing turned around, and Han Xiao followed behind. Chunxing's assistant contacted the organizers, and the officials quickly found out about Han Zhao's identity. It turned out that he was a mercenary that they had worked with before, and he had Floating Dragon's background, so he could be trusted. Although it was not appropriate to let a mercenary enter the venue, they still agreed to this request on account of Han Zhao's clean background and Chunxing's face. They walked through the passage and boarded the celebration spaceship. Along the way, Sylvia was in a daze, not understanding what had happened. She had boarded the celebration that she had always dreamed of just like that. When she came back to her senses, she hurriedly pulled Han Zhao's clothes and said in surprise, "You really did it? Based on my understanding of you, your memory doesn't seem to have dropped to the level of being retarded. Maybe I should let you memorize a few more books to train?" Han Xiao stared at Chunxing's back and did not look away. "I thought you were lying." Sylvia did not know what to say. It was really like what Han Xiao had said. The two of them had been invited onto the spaceship, but she would never have dreamed that the person who invited them would be Chunxing. Furthermore, it seemed like it was an impromptu decision. She suppressed her excitement and asked impatiently, "How did you do it?" "No amount of people can hide my charm," Han Xiao said perfunctorily. The real reason was naturally the mysterious statue that Han Xiao had with him. Chunxing had a special perception of the psychic current contained in the statue. As long as it was within a certain range, it would definitely attract his attention. Therefore, Han Xiao knew that Qin Shing would invite him onto the spaceship because of this. After everyone boarded the ship, the major cities on the main planet let off a series of fireworks. Then, the wine and celebration took off with a rumble, orbiting around the main planet of Faron. The body of the ship emitted brilliant lights, and when the people on the surface looked up, they could also see the giant spaceship that was like an orbiting celestial body. Han Xiao was arranged to sit in the VIP room of Qin Shing's team. Qin Shing did not talk to him immediately. Instead, he went to prepare for the program. He instructed his assistant that if Han Xiao asked why he was invited, he was to tell him that he would meet with him privately after the ceremony. However, the assistant waited for a long time, but Han Xiao did not show any curiosity. After entering the room, he closed his eyes and rested, as if he did not care at all about why he was invited. After waiting for a long time, the assistant had no choice but to speak first. Your Excellency, Qin Shing wishes to speak with you after the ceremony. Please be patient and enjoy the performance. Han Xiao was a man of few words. In fact, he knew everything about Qin Shing and had no intention of asking. After a while, the audience sat down. Qiong, you're a galactic mercenary, so I would like to ask you to help me find the last 2 statues. For this, I will pay you a reward. How about 100,000 anus? 10. Sylvia almost suffocated. Wasn't this a little too extravagant? Han Xiao was not surprised. It was very normal for celebrities to be rich. Furthermore, this mission was famous in his previous life because the reward did not match the difficulty of the mission at all. Sure. Do you have any requests? Han Xiao's lips curled up slightly. As for requests, Qin Shing tapped his lips with his finger. Of course, the faster the better. You have triggered a grade C mission. Find the statues. Mission introduction. A singer named Qin Shing is collecting a special type of statue. He hopes that you can find the remaining statues for him. Mission requirements. Find the other 2 mysterious statues. Note, when you have 2 statues, you will notice if there are other statues within a certain range. Basic reward. 10 ANAs, 110 EXP. After the mission ends, a rating will be given based on the time taken. The shorter the time taken, the higher the rating, and additional rewards will be given. How about the mission? Han Xiao squinted his eyes. This was the mission that he had specifically wanted to trigger. He had searched through his memory and listed the most suitable missions for him to get a high rating. Searching for the items was not difficult, but it was very time-consuming. He had to run around to find the location of the other statues and ask for information from many people. The process was very complicated, and time was the basis of the rating. However, to Han Xiao, it was not difficult at all. Thanks to the players in his previous life, he knew the location of the last 2 statues himself, so he could skip the search process and go straight to the root of the problem. There was no doubt that he would get a high rating. He did not want to go straight to grade A, so he had to take a roundabout route and use the chance of a random reward to draw a mission completion card. The reward of the mission itself was not important. The random reward was the key. Until you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.